My sister demanded I sleep in the nanny's attic because I was just a broke IT guy. She didn't know I had just sold my tech company for $18.5 million. Then, at her perfect Thanksgiving dinner, her husband accidentally revealed my secret to the entire table. I, 31M, have spent my entire existence as the ghost of my family, while my older sister Chloe, 34F, bathed in the endless, blinding spotlight of my parents' adoration. I quietly built a cybersecurity empire that recently sold for $18.5 million. Absolutely nobody in my family knew a single thing about it until last Thanksgiving, when the truth slipped out over truffle mashed potatoes, triggering the most spectacular, earth-shattering meltdown I have ever witnessed. Decades of toxic family dynamics imploded in exactly 4 minutes. Growing up in a painfully average suburb of Philadelphia, my childhood looked picturesque from the sidewalk. My parents, Arthur and Helen, were both high-level academics who worshipped at the altar of traditional prestige. Dad was a university dean. Mom was the head mistress of an elite private school. From the moment I could walk, the unspoken hierarchy of our household was permanently etched into the walls. Chloe was the undeniable golden child. She was a piano prodigy by age 6, a regional debate champion, and maintained a flawless 4 gigapascals. Her bedroom was a shrine of gold ribbons, gleaming trophies, and framed certificates. My room, shoved at the end of the hall, was a graveyard of spare computer parts, tangled wires, and sports posters. Not that anyone ever saw it. My parents treated my room like a storage closet they occasionally had to shout into. "Leo, come down here." Mom would shriek from the foyer. "Chloe just got accepted into the summer pre-med program at Columbia. We're going out for steak." I'd trudge downstairs, offer my congratulations, and watch them celebrate. When I won first place at the state robotics competition a month later, Dad barely glanced up from his newspaper. "That's nice, Leo. Don't leave your metal scraps on the kitchen island." The trophy went straight into a cardboard box. Birthdays were the ultimate indicator of my worthlessness. Chloe's birthdays were cinematic events: catered garden parties, string quartets, and custom-tiered cakes. My parents would spend months stressing over the guest list. For my 16th birthday, Mom handed me a grocery store gift card and said, "We're swamped with Chloe's SAT prep this weekend, sweetie. Order yourself a pizza." When it came time for college, the disparity became financial. My parents had liquidated my modest college fund to pay for Chloe's exorbitant Columbia University tuition and her luxury off-campus apartment. "You can just go to Penn State and take out loans, Leo," Dad told me with a dismissive wave. "Computer science isn't a real profession anyway. You're just playing video games. Chloe is going to be a surgeon." So, I went to Penn State. I lived in a cinderblock dorm that smelled like mold, working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. But for the first time in my life, I was completely free from the suffocating shadow of my sister. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Vance, a cybersecurity expert who actually saw my potential. He looked at the encryption algorithms I was writing in my spare time and told me I had a once-in-a-generation mind for data protection. While my parents only called to brag about Chloe's engagement to Julian, a wealthy, aristocratic cardiologist from Connecticut, I was quietly building the foundation of my future. By senior year, I had developed a revolutionary security protocol for financial transactions. Major tech recruiters were throwing massive salaries at me, but I turned them all down. I wanted to build my own company. When I told my parents I was moving to Seattle to launch a startup, they looked at me like I had announced I was joining a circus. "Why can't you just be normal and get a stable IT job?" Mom sighed, rubbing her temples. "Chloe and Julian are buying a mansion in Greenwich. Why must you always be such a disappointment?" I packed my 2004 Honda Civic with $15,000 in life savings and drove to Seattle. I didn't speak to them for months. I didn't need to. I was too busy working 110-hour weeks, sleeping on a damp mattress in a windowless basement, and eating canned beans. My company, VaultNet, aimed to solve the massive data breach issues plaguing hospitals and regional banks. The first 3 years were pure hell. We were almost bankrupted by a frivolous lawsuit from a massive copycat corporation. I showered at a local YMCA and sold my car just to make payroll for my 4 employees. My family? They called maybe twice a year. "Chloe is pregnant with twins," Mom would gush. "How is your little computer repair business going, Leo? Still struggling?" "It's going fine," I would reply. I never told them about the lawsuit. I never told them about the nights I cried from stress. Because I knew they wouldn't care. Then, the breakthrough happened. A major Seattle bank adopted VaultNet's protocols. It worked flawlessly, stopping 3 massive cyber attacks in a single month. Suddenly, we were the hottest commodity in the tech world. Within 2 years, we scaled from 5 employees to over 300. We moved into a sleek high-rise in downtown Seattle. And then, the offer came. Omnicorp, one of the largest tech conglomerates on the planet, offered to buy VaultNet for $18.5 million. They wanted my tech, my team, and my vision. I was 30 years old. I signed the papers on a Tuesday, walked out of the boardroom, and realized I was a multimillionaire. I bought a beautiful but understated penthouse in Seattle, invested the vast majority of my wealth into index funds and real estate, and set up a philanthropic foundation for underprivileged tech students. I didn't buy a Lamborghini. I didn't buy a yacht, and most importantly, I didn't breathe a single word of it to my family. As far as they were concerned, I was still Leo, the struggling IT guy. Then came the email in late October. It was a formal, ridiculously pompous invitation to Thanksgiving at Chloe and Julian's sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. My parents were CC'd. My immediate instinct was to delete it. But then Chloe called me. "Mom and Dad begged me to invite you," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Julian's parents will be there. Plus some very important board members from his hospital. Please, Leo, wear something presentable. Don't embarrass us. And we don't have a proper guest room for you, so you'll have to sleep in the nanny's quarters in the attic." Something snapped inside me. For 31 years, I had shrunk myself to make them comfortable. I decided, right then and there, that I was done hiding. "I'll be there," I said. Update 1. I flew first class to New York, hired a private black car, and had it drop me off 2 blocks from Chloe's house so I could walk up the driveway. I didn't want to show my hand too early. Chloe's house was a monstrous, 6-bedroom colonial monstrosity that screamed new money. When she opened the door, she looked me up and down. I was wearing a custom-tailored cashmere sweater and designer trousers, but because there were no flashy logos, she assumed it was cheap. "Well, at least you don't look homeless," she scoffed, handing me a massive pile of coats to hang up like I was the butler. The house was suffocating. Everything was imported marble, crystal chandeliers, and aggressive pretension. My parents were already there, sipping champagne in the sitting room. Mom gave me a stiff hug. "Oh, Leo. You look so thin. Are you eating enough on your little computer salary?" Dad just patted my shoulder and immediately went back to talking to Julian's father about golf. I was banished to the 3rd-floor attic. It was cramped, drafty, and smelled like dust. Meanwhile, my parents were given the sprawling master guest suite with a jacuzzi. I just smiled, unpacked my bag, and waited for dinner. By 4 p.m., the dining room was packed with 20 people. Julian's wealthy family, several elite hospital administrators, my parents, and Chloe, who was buzzing around like a frantic queen bee. I was seated at the absolute far end of the table, wedged between a deaf great aunt and a potted fern. Dinner began with Chloe's insufferable tradition. Everyone had to go around the table and announce what they were thankful for. It was essentially a disguised bragging session. "I am thankful for my promotion to chief of surgery," Julian announced, raising his glass. "I am thankful for my beautiful twins getting into the gifted academy," Chloe beamed, "and for our new summer home in the Hamptons." When it got to my parents, Mom literally teared up. "I am just so thankful for Chloe and Julian, and the beautiful, successful life they've built. They are the absolute pride of this family." She didn't even mention my name. Finally, all eyes fell on me. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. People looked at me with a mixture of pity and boredom. "I'm thankful for independence," I said calmly. "And for the freedom to build my own path." Chloe rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might detach a retina. "How quaint," she muttered, signaling the catering staff to bring out the turkey. As we ate, the conversation shifted to business. Julian was talking animatedly to his hospital administrators about a massive technological overhaul they were implementing. "It's completely changing how we handle patient data," Julian was saying loudly, commanding the table. "We just licensed this new, military-grade encryption software. The company was just acquired by Omnicorp for almost $20 million. The kid who founded it is supposedly an absolute genius. Built the whole architecture from scratch. It's called VaultNet." I froze. I slowly lowered my fork. Julian's father leaned in. "VaultNet? I read about that in the Wall Street Journal." The founder kept a remarkably low profile. "Who was it?" "Some guy named Leo," Julian said, taking a sip of wine. "Leo Mitchell. Same last name as us, actually. Imagine if we had a billionaire tech genius in the family, right?" Julian laughed. Chloe laughed. My parents chuckled. I dabbed my mouth with a linen napkin. The room was perfectly quiet except for the clinking of silverware. I looked directly at Julian. "It was 18.5 million, actually," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a gunshot. Julian stopped laughing. He stared at me, his brow furrowing. "Excuse me?" "Omnicorp bought VaultNet for $18.5 million, I repeated, holding his gaze. "And the encryption architecture took me exactly 4 years to build, not counting the beta testing phase." Chloe let out a sharp, condescending breath. "Leo, please. Don't interrupt Julian's story with your weird internet trivia. Nobody cares about your IT knowledge right now." "It's not trivia, Chloe," I said, leaning forward, resting my elbows on the mahogany table. "I know the exact acquisition price because I signed the contract. VaultNet was my company. I am Leo Mitchell. The silence that slammed into that dining room was absolute, deafening, and violently heavy. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Julian's wine glass literally slipped from his fingers, tipping over and spilling dark red Cabernet all over the pristine white tablecloth. He didn't even notice. He was staring at me with his mouth slightly open. Wait. What? You're times Leo Mitchell? The founder of VaultNet? Yes, I said. My mother let out a nervous, high-pitched giggle. Leo, stop making up stories. Julian is talking about a millionaire. I can pull up the SEC filings on my phone right now if you'd like, Mom, I offered, pulling my phone from my pocket. Or the Forbes article. Or the press release from Omnicorp featuring my face. Dad's fork clattered loudly onto his plate. All the color instantly drained from his face. $18 million? He choked out, looking like he was about to have a myocardial infarction. You sold a company for $18 million? Yes, Dad. Chloe abruptly stood up. Her chair scraped violently against the hardwood floor. Her face was turning a dangerous shade of crimson. This is a joke. This is some sick, twisted joke you're playing to ruin my Thanksgiving. You fix computers. You live in a cheap apartment in Seattle. I own a penthouse in downtown Seattle, Chloe, I corrected her gently. I haven't fixed a computer for someone else in 6 years. I built a cybersecurity firm, scaled it, and sold it. I've been financially independent for a very long time. Julian was looking at me with a sudden, intense reverence that I had never seen on his face before. The algorithmic structure you designed for the firewall. It's brilliant. We've been studying it for weeks. You built that? I did, I nodded. Why didn't you tell us? Chloe suddenly shrieked at the top of her lungs, completely abandoning her refined, wealthy socialite persona. The hospital administrators were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Julian's parents looked horrified. Tell you what, Chloe? I asked, keeping my voice dangerously calm. That I was successful? Why would I? Every time I called, Mom only wanted to talk about your new cars. Dad only wanted to talk about Julian's promotions. For 31 years, my achievements have been treated like an inconvenience. When I won the state robotics tournament, Dad told me to clean up my metal scraps. When I started my business, Mom told me I was a disappointment. Money was never the currency of love in this family. Blind worship of you was. That is a lie. Mom cried out, tears streaming down her face. We loved you both equally. We just wanted to help Chloe because she was on a traditional path. You drained my college fund to pay for her luxury apartment. I fired back, my voice finally rising just a fraction, the decades of suppressed rage leaking out. You made me sleep in the nanny's attic tonight because you thought I was poor. You didn't even put my name on my 16th birthday cake. Don't you dare sit there and rewrite history just because you found out my net worth. Chloe was practically hyperventilating. You malicious little psycho? She spat, pointing a shaking finger at me. You sat on millions of dollars while Mom and Dad helped pay for our twins' private school? You watched us stress over our mortgage and you did nothing? The entire table gasped. Julian whipped his head around to look at his wife. Wait, Julian said, his voice dropping an octave. What do you mean Mom and Dad helped pay for the twins' tuition? What mortgage stress, Chloe? We make over $800,000 a year. Our house is paid off. The room plunged back into a suffocating, icy silence. Chloe froze. The color vanished from her face, leaving her looking like a wax statue. I looked between Chloe and Julian, the pieces rapidly falling into place. Oh, wow, I breathed. Julian. You didn't know? Update 2. The fallout from that single moment at the dinner table was like watching a nuclear bomb detonate in slow motion. Julian, completely ignoring me now, turned fully toward Chloe. What mortgage stress, Chloe? He demanded, his voice echoing in the dining room. Answer me. Where has our money been going? Chloe burst into hysterical, frantic tears. She tried to deflect, screaming at me for ruining her life, screaming at her parents to defend her. But Julian wasn't having it. He stood up, grabbed her by the arm, and dragged her into his private study, slamming the heavy oak doors behind them. The rest of the guests practically sprinted for the door. The hospital administrators awkwardly excused themselves. Julian's parents looked physically ill as they gathered their coats, and my parents sat at the ruined dining table, completely paralyzed by shock. I didn't stay. I walked upstairs to the drafty attic, packed my bag, called an Uber, and left. I checked into a luxury suite at the Four Seasons in downtown Boston and ordered room service. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could finally breathe. The next morning, my phone had 7 missed calls. Most were from my parents, but a dozen were from Chloe. I ignored them all until Dad texted me, please, Leo. Just 1 cup of coffee, I am begging you. I am so sorry. I agreed to meet him at a small cafe near my hotel. When Dad walked in, he looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. He was stooped, His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were shaking. He sat across from me and just stared at his black coffee for a long time. I don't know how to apologize for 30 years of blindness, he finally whispered, his voice cracking. We were so obsessed with the image of success that we completely ignored actual greatness when it was sitting right in front of us. I am so deeply ashamed of how I treated you, Leo. I am so sorry. I looked at him. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a profound, hollow pity. Why did you do it, Dad? Why was she always the sun, and I was just a rock in her orbit? Dad closed his eyes, a tear escaping down his wrinkled cheek. Because she was exactly what we understood. She played the game. The grades, the piano, the medical husband. It validated us. You were entirely your own person. You didn't need our archaic systems to succeed. And I think, deep down, it intimidated us. So we diminished you to make ourselves feel bigger. It is the greatest failure of my life. It was the most honest thing he had ever said to me. I thanked him for his apology, paid for the coffee, and told him I needed space. But the real explosion happened later that afternoon. My phone rang. It was Chloe. I answered, expecting an apology, but instead, I was met with the screeching, frantic desperation of a cornered animal. You have to give me $400,000. She screamed into the phone, completely bypassing any greeting. Leo, you have to wire it to me right now. Julian is threatening to leave me. You owe me for destroying my Thanksgiving. I actually laughed. I don't owe you a single cent, Chloe. What the hell did you do? Over the next 20 minutes of hysterical sobbing, the dark, rotting truth of my sister's perfect life spilled out. Chloe hadn't just been living beyond her means. She had been running a massive, fraudulent financial operation behind her husband's back. Julian worked 80-hour weeks at the hospital and left all the finances to Chloe. To maintain her image as the ultimate wealthy Greenwich socialite, Chloe had secretly taken out a massive second mortgage on their fully paid-off house. She had maxed out 6 secret credit cards. She was spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on designer clothes, luxury vacations, country club fees, and lavish parties just to impress her snooty friend. When the debt became unmanageable, she had secretly gone to our parents. Over the last 3 years, Mom and Dad had quietly drained their retirement accounts to bail Chloe out, handing her over $150,000 to keep Julian from finding out. But it wasn't enough. The debt had ballooned to over $400,000. Julian found the hidden bank statements last night. Chloe sobbed, her voice cracking. He's packing his bags, Leo. He's talking to a divorce lawyer. If you just wire me the money, I can pay off the secret mortgage and fix this. You have $18 million. $400,000 is nothing to you. You owe me for exposing me. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement was breathtaking. She had lied to her husband, robbed our parents of their retirement, and was now demanding I fix her life because I happen to be wealthy. Listen to me very carefully, Chloe, I said, my voice ice cold. I don't owe you anything. You built a life out of paper and lies just so you could look down on people like me. I am not bailing you out. You are going to face the consequences of your own actions for the absolute first time in your 34 years on this earth. If you don't give me the money, I will sue you for emotional distress. She shrieked, completely losing her grip on reality. I will tell everyone you stole that company idea from me. Good luck with that, I said, and hung up. I immediately blocked her number. The fallout was swift and brutal. Julian, a man of intense pride and strict morals, filed for divorce the very next week. During the discovery phase, his forensic accountants uncovered the full extent of Chloe's financial deceit. Because she had forged his signature on the second mortgage documents, she was held entirely liable for the debt. Julian got primary custody of the twins, arguing successfully that Chloe was financially unstable and deceitful. Chloe was forced to sell her designer bags, her jewelry, and her luxury SUV just to afford a mediocre divorce attorney. She had to move out of the Greenwich mansion and is currently renting a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a much less glamorous zip code. My parents were utterly devastated. Not only had their golden child's life imploded, but they realized they had bankrupted their own golden years to fund her delusions. They tried reaching out to me a few times, dropping heavy hints about how they were struggling with their retirement funds now. I didn't bite. I sent them a single, polite email stating that while I forgave them for my childhood, I was not going to be their financial safety net after they had freely given their money to Chloe. I told them I wished them the best, but I was focusing on my own life now. Last week, I sat in my downtown Seattle office, looking out over the Puget Sound. I was having a meeting with a 19-year-old kid named Marcus. He was a brilliant coder from a rough neighborhood who couldn't afford college. My foundation was giving him a full-ride scholarship and seed money for his first app. My family thinks I'm crazy, Marcus told me, looking nervously at his hands. They think I'm just playing on my laptop. They don't understand what I'm trying to build. I smiled, seeing a mirror image of my younger self in his eyes. They don't have to understand it, Marcus, I told him, handing him the grant check. You just have to build it. The silence of your success will eventually be louder than their doubts ever were. I walked out of the office that day feeling a profound sense of peace. The ghost of the invisible son was finally dead. I didn't need to destroy my family. Their own toxic obsession with appearances did that for me. I just had to survive long enough to let the truth catch up to them. My sister smashed my 6-year-old daughter's bike with a hammer. While my mother blamed me, I shared the proof and cut them off. My sister smashed my 6-year-old daughter's new bike with a hammer right in front of her. That should be a lesson for her, she remarked. You shouldn't have bought it for her, my mother said. I did not yell, I simply smiled and said one sentence, and their faces became pale. Now, let me pause for a while because if I don't, you'll believe I'm making this up. But no, this actually happened. Imagine this. A bright Saturday afternoon. One of those rare moments when the laundry is done, the dishwasher isn't beeping, and the world seems nearly bearable. My daughter Chloe is leaping around, grinning from ear to ear, almost shining with delight. She had been eager to show off the bike that is sitting in our driveway. Shiny, bright and flawless. Who are we having over? My mother and sister Brittany. Because of course, why ruin an otherwise lovely Saturday with family politics? When Chloe sees them, she virtually cries, "Have you seen the new bike?" Her voice is so full of pleasure that I can feel it rising up. She grabs their hands and pulls them outdoors, as if she were going to reveal the crown jewels. And that's when I noticed it. Brittany's expression changed, her smile clenched and her jaw hardened. You know the expression someone makes when they've eaten something nasty but don't want to confess it? That was her. I recognized the look. I had grown up with it. Still, I was unprepared for what happened next. Brittany said nothing at first. She simply stood there staring at the bike, as if it had personally offended her. Chloe was still beaming, pointing out the minor features she adored, like the streamers on the handles and the way the paint reflected light. Then Brittany spoke, her voice cool and almost serene. Let me show you what I think about this. And before I could figure out what she meant, she turned on her heel, strode into my house, and emerged with a hammer. A hammer? Now, let me tell you that in situations like this, you don't believe what you're witnessing. Your brain is scrambling. You think, surely she's not going to. She wouldn't. Oh, but she would. She lowered the hammer onto the bike's frame with a single forceful swing. The sound. It sounded like metal screaming. Chloe gave a small gasp. The way her hands rose to cover her mouth. God, I'll never forget this. Another swing. A crunch. The paint splintered. The wheel bent. I remained there transfixed, watching, my body immobile. But my mind racing like if every alarm in the world had gone off at once. Do you know what Brittany said? She did not shout. She did not rant. She simply stared my 6-year-old daughter, my baby, square in the eyes and said, that should be a lesson for her. A lesson. As if telling a child that joy can be destroyed with 3 hammers is a valuable lesson. Chloe did not cry. Not right away. She only stared at her broken treasure. Her lips trembled and her small shoulders shook. And me? I felt a cold wave surge over me. Not wrath, not yet. Just shock. That's when my mother decided to weigh in. Of course you'd expect a grandmother to pick up her granddaughter, console her and possibly chastise her other daughter for going full demolition mode in the driveway, but no. Instead, my mother shook her head, folded her arms, and muttered, "You shouldn't have bought it for her." As if it were my fault. I nearly laughed. I mean, it's crazy to stand there while my sister turns a 6-year-old's joy into scrap metal, and I'm somehow the problem. I did not yell, I did not cry. I didn't fling myself at Brittany or take the hammer from her. No. I stood there, smiling. Because quiet may be the sharpest knife you have. Brittany dropped the hammer on the pavement with a clang. She appeared satisfied. My mother nodded, as if Brittany had just made a valid point. And me? I only smiled and spoke a single sentence. And whatever they expected me to do, I'll plead and defend myself. Oh no. What I stated turned their faces pallid. Now you're probably itching to know what that one statement was. And I will tell you, but not now. Because the reality is, that moment in the driveway, with a bike broken into a useless heap, my sister looking smug and my mother feeling righteous, didn't happen out of nowhere. It was years in the making. Brittany was my younger sister by 2 years, and she was born screaming. And honestly, I don't believe she ever quit. The distinction is that when most children scream, their parents teach them boundaries. When Brittany shouted, my parents taught me. Every one of her tantrums ended up being my fault. She did not obtain the toy she sought. Why didn't you give her yours, Lauren? She lost a game. Why couldn't you simply let her win? You understand how sensitive she is. She broke something. Why did you get her so agitated that she hurled it? By the age of 10, I could run a crash course in walking on eggshells. My mother's favorite line was, "Don't upset your sister," which was hilarious because Brittany could get angry by almost anything. I recall one incident vividly. I saved my allowance to purchase her a small jewelry. Cheap, but cute. I thought I was being a decent older sister. She opened it, found it wasn't pink, but blue, screamed like I had given her a dead rat, and snapped the chain in half. My mother did not scold her. She looked at me and said, "You know, she wanted pink. Why would you get blue?" That was my childhood in a nutshell. Brittany's shattered stuff. I was blamed. Fast forward a few decades, and guess what? Certain things never change. I studied law, worked long nights, and eventually established a solid career. It paid off. I make more than the rest of my family and can afford to live comfortably. As a result, I frequently assisted them financially, covering basics and ensuring that bills were paid. But there's an issue with aiding individuals who already dislike you. No matter how much you give, it is never enough. I would assist with groceries, power, or medication. But when I said no to extras, I became stingy, greedy, and arrogant. In their view, if I wasn't funding every wish, I was the bad guy. So, when I say the bike incident did not happen out of nowhere, do you see what I mean? It began one afternoon when my daughter Chloe and my niece Madison, Brittany's young kid of roughly the same age as Chloe, were playing outside. Madison had her bike, which she had been riding for a while, except that day, it failed her. Something snapped or slipped. I didn't see what happened, but I heard the wail. Chloe, bless her, attempted to help. She's 6, so her concept of fixing things is just poking them and saying, "I can do it." But the truth is that the bike was already broken. Of course, the moment Brittany saw it, she pointed at my daughter and yelled, "She broke it." It looked like Chloe had smashed it with a sledgehammer. My mother immediately backed her up. "Lauren, you need to accept responsibility. Chloe needs to realize that her acts have repercussions." I did not argue. I just said we'd bring the bike home so Ethan, my husband, could look at it, because sometimes you pick your battles and sometimes you wait for proof. That evening, Ethan rolled the bike into his garage. He works well with tools, is patient and methodical. He turned it over and checked the chain, frame and pedals. After 10 minutes, he glanced up at me and said, "This isn't Chloe. This is a defect. See this? It could have failed on anyone." Worse yet, he was correct. It was risky. If Madison had been traveling downhill or crossing a roadway when it broke, well, let's just say I don't want to continue that sentence. So, no, my daughter had not damaged the bike. The bicycle had broken itself. And that's when my rage set in. I had fought my way through law school, so I knew just what phrases to say when someone attempted to avoid accountability. I took up the phone and called the manufacturer. I described the situation in detail. A child's bike has been broken owing to a flaw. It is unsafe and inappropriate. I might have also used terms like liability and injury. It's amazing how quickly people start listening when you throw those in. By the next morning I had an email in my inbox. They weren't simply replacing the bike. See, this is where being persistent and, perhaps frightening, pays off. I pressed. I contended that a basic replacement was insufficient. Madison deserved better, especially considering the risk she had been put in. So they agreed to upgrade to the type Madison had been begging for, the dream bike she'd been raving about non-stop. And when that email arrived, I smiled because there would finally be justice. Madison would have the bike she desired, and Chloe's name would be cleansed. The whole woman broke it crap would crumble the instant everyone realized what had actually transpired. I chose to keep things quiet. I wanted it to be a surprise. Imagine it. Madison's face lit up as she noticed the bike of her dreams waiting for her. Brittany realizes her daughter has something amazing thanks to me. Not despite me. For a brief period I considered whether this could repair things. But as I discovered in the driveway, some individuals do not want things healed. They want them broken. Brittany imagined that I had purchased that bike for my child when her child did not have one. Chloe had broken the previous one inside her skull. And now I had gone and purchased the very model her daughter had been fantasizing about so Chloe could ride in front of her. Humiliation disguised as benevolence. Cruelty with sparkly streamers. That was the lie she told herself as she lifted the hammer. I let the silence last until even the birds seemed uneasy. The metal ticked gently as it settled. My mother's lips formed a thin line of approval, as if discipline had just been administered and dessert would follow. I didn't provide them dessert. I'm going to say this once, I informed them, my tone so low that it astonished me. That bike wasn't for Chloe. 2 beats. Their pupils darted around looking for the trick. It was for Madison. Brittany blinked first. No, it wasn't. It came out quickly, like a sneeze. It was, I answered. I fought the manufacturer to replace the defective one and got the upgrade, the one she's been talking about for months. My mother clicked her tongue like she would before a lecture. Don't be dramatic, Lauren. I gazed down at the broken frame. I'm not the one who brought a hammer to a children's bike. Brittany's face became blotchy. You're lying. You always lie when you get caught. About what? Emails, paperwork, the badge-wearing words liability and child safety. I smiled. Would you like me to pull them up or would you prefer I read them aloud in the front yard? That landed. I watched as it registered. In her account, she describes the dawning, the recoil, and the sudden impulse to reorganize the furnishings. Her attention shifted from the bike to Chloe, then back to me. You expect me to believe you'd do something like that for my kid? No, I replied. I expect you to regret what you just did. Chloe's hand touched the back of my leg. Small, warm and steady. I covered it with my. I did not look down. I did not want her to see my eyes yet. Not like this. My mother went forward, as if mere proximity might change reality. Lauren, there's no need to humiliate your sister. You can fix this. Claim insurance. Say it was a misunderstanding. And the part where a grown woman destroyed a 6-year-old's joy on purpose, I blurted out. Do we classify that under misunderstanding or teachable moment? Brittany folded her arms so tightly that her knuckles became white. It was just a moment, she sniffed. People have moments. Kitchen crying is a moment, I explained. This was a demolition project. Watch your tone, my mother warned, as if tone had been the weapon here. I let the silence fall again. It had weight now. You may put a glass on it. Leave, I replied. Brittany laughed with a piercing, unbelieving bark. Leave what? My house, I replied. And after that? My life. They stared at me as if I had declared that I was moving to Mars. My mother's hand soared upward, fingers gripping pearls that were not present. Don't be ridiculous. We're family. That word, I responded, doesn't imply what you use it to mean. Brittany's eyes narrowed. You don't mean it. I kept my voice even. I do. She took a step towards Chloe. I shifted instinctively, one hand gently easing my daughter behind me. Ethan had remained quiet up until now. You've experienced the stillness that certain guys have, which might feel like a room remembering its shape. He stepped onto the porch, wiped his palms on his jeans, and paused near me. Time to go. He whispered gently to each of them. Not furious or haughty. Just final. Ethan, my mother tried. Talk sense into your wife. I am, he answered, and there it was, a door closing without smashing. Brittany stared past us down the corridor, as if the correct words could still be hanging on a coat hook. You can't do this, she replied. We're your family. We help each other. You brought a hammer to my child's joy, I told you. Help has exited the chat. For a brief moment, her countenance changed. I could not tell whether it was fear or comprehension. She rounded on me again, frantic. We can fix it. We can just say it was an accident. No one needs to know. Chloe knows, I said. I know. You know. I bent my head toward the street. And the neighbors with windows probably also know. My mother sought a courtroom compromise. We'll talk tomorrow when you've calmed down. I nearly laughed. I'm calm, I said. That's what's scaring you. Ethan opened the gate. Please leave, I replied, and this time, I did not include the rest. Some phrases become sharper when they conclude early. They paused. You could feel the push-pull on their faces, the old habit of bulldozing, the new knowledge that bulldozers require keys, and I wasn't handing them over any longer. Brittany went first, shoulders tense and steps rapid. My mother followed, halting on the threshold as if she would turn around and rewrite the entire scene with a single scolding. I simply gazed at her. She stepped outside. Ethan closed the door. Not a slam, a seal, or stillness. It was not empty. It had a shape and a temperature in it. I could hear Chloe taking little breaths. She could feel the tremor diminishing in her hand. We stood there for a count of 10, long enough for my heartbeat to descend off the roof. Chloe finally said, Mom. With a papery voice. Did I do something wrong? I crouched so that we were eye to eye. No, I replied. You did nothing wrong. Her chin wobbled. Auntie was mad. She was, I answered. But people can be mad and still be wrong. She nodded as if she understood, which hurt me a little more than the bike. Do we still get ice cream? She inquired, as if we had forfeited dessert by upsetting the parents. Definitely, I said. 2 scoops, 3 if you tell Dad which ones. A ghostly smile. Chocolate and sprinkles. Scientifically optimal choice. Ethan murmured from behind her, hoping to lighten the mood. However, the air in that house had changed. It wasn't as hefty as it had been throughout my life. It was bright and clean, almost too clear. I could feel the hush settling in. But, for once, it did not feel weak. It seemed like a limit. We stepped inside, and as Ethan distracted Chloe with sprinkles and ice cream, I took out my phone. My hands did not shake. Not anymore. I opened each account that I had been paying into. Utilities, streaming, and food. I removed my cards one by one. No announcement, no explanation, and no speech, simply clicks, done. It was not theatrical. It wasn't vengeance. It was about survival. And it didn't take long because, as I was rinsing the bowls and Chloe was crunching sprinkles between her teeth, my phone lit up. This time it was more than just messages. It was a call. Mom, Brittany, and Mom again. I did not pick up, but I read the preview of one text, which was sufficient. We just received a notice. Your card has been removed from the account. Why would you do that? Add it back. They knew. Another arrived seconds later. What are you playing at? This is petty. Put the card back now. I stared at the computer, seeing the urgency in their words. It's amazing how quickly people go from righteous to begging when the faucet turns off. Ethan looked over. You don't have to answer. I know. I slid the phone face down on the counter, but the buzzing continued. Call after call, text after text, as if they could pound their way back into my life with sheer determination. One finally came through with so much venom that I had to read it twice. You're going to regret this. Family is family. You can't simply cut us out. That's when I smiled, realizing for the first time that they were mistaken. I could. And I did. By the next morning, the calls had subsided, but the texts had not. And when the buzzing finally stopped, I should have realized it wasn't serenity. It was planned. Because if my family can do one thing, it is to rewrite history. The first sign was a ping from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 6 months. Hey, I apologize about the drama. I hope you and Chloe are fine. I frowned. Drama. I considered shattering a child's bike with a hammer to be a felony, not drama. Then came the screenshots. Apparently my sister and mother had taken their campaign online, or at least into our extended family group chat, which still contained the digital remnants of a reunion photo from 2015. They turned the entire situation into a tragedy in which they were the victims, and I was the villain. They claimed Chloe broke Madison's bike. I declined to help. And then, this is my favorite part, I cut them off financially for spite. No mention of the hammer, no mention of the driveway, no mention of my mother standing there nodding like a judge passing sentence while my sister ruined a 6-year-old's joy. The story was so bizarre that it should have come with a funhouse mirror. I wanted to disregard it, I actually did. But when I watched relatives respond with little thumbs up emojis, oh no poor Madison, and that's so cruel of Lauren, something in me snapped. Because, here's the deal. People can mistake me for a cold person. People sometimes believe I'm difficult. But is my daughter being portrayed as a spoiled child who was rewarded for wrecking someone else's bike? Number that I will not let slide. So I did not. I opened the security app. You know those cameras you put on your porch because you are concerned about package thieves? It turns out that they also capture family meltdowns. And there it was, crystal clear. Brittany walks out with the hammer. Chloe gave a small gasp. Metal bends. Paint cracking. My mother's voice in the background, blaming me. The entire terrible symphony. I grabbed the clip, cut nothing, and reposted it on the family chat. There's no commentary or diatribe, just the video, and one sentence. For the record, that bicycle was intended for Madison. Brittany destroyed it herself. This is why Madison does not have a bike anymore. Then I put my phone down. I did not have to wait long. The conversation exploded like a grenade in a container. Aunts gasped in all capitals. Cousins typing WTF, as if they were auditioning for a new keyboard shortcut. People who had quietly believed the revised narrative were forced to confront the truth. and the reality was wearing sweatpants and wielding a hammer. I should have felt justified. Instead, I felt exhausted. Because here's the deal. People do not appreciate it when you tell them the truth. They simply choose the loudest side. My mother called within an hour. I almost didn't respond. But a part of me wanted to know what explanation she had come up with. She did not disappoint. Yes, maybe your sister overreacted, she said. But how could you post that video? You've ruined her reputation. I held back a laugh. She ruined herself, Mom. I just pressed play. You don't humiliate your family, she shouted. Funny, I said. That's exactly what she did to a 6-year-old with a hammer. The stillness on the line was piercing enough to draw blood, then she hung up. However, the consequences was not over because the video did not simply make its way into our family discussion. It spread. Friends of friends and neighbors. Someone even shared it on Facebook, with the message, "Who does this?" Brittany's husband seemed to have seen it. Now I won't pretend we ever got along. He constantly acted as if he were auditioning for the most exhausted guy in America. Even he couldn't look at that footage and shrug. He called me, which is something he never does. Is it real? He inquired. His voice was flat, but I could detect something beneath it. Yes, I answered. It's real. He breathed slowly and deeply, as if he were releasing air from an overinflated balloon. Thank you, he said before hanging up. The next thing I knew, he had filed for divorce and custody of Madison. And, curiously enough, that was the first time I felt relieved since it meant someone else had finally noticed it. Finally, I responded, "This is not okay." The calls from Brittany and my mother continued, but their tone had changed. Less righteous and more desperate. You didn't have to post it, you're tearing this family apart. Think of your niece. As if I hadn't been thinking about her the entire time. I stopped responding. Instead, I sat on the edge of Chloe's bed that night, watching her sleep, and allowed myself to experience something I hadn't felt in a long time. Nor fury, nor tiredness, but insight. Because this is something they have never understood. Family is not a free pass. You can't smash, lie and demand while expecting total loyalty. Family is meant to represent protection, safety, and affection. And if it doesn't, perhaps family is just another word that people use to avoid facing repercussions. Finally, I drew the line. This may go too extreme for some folks. For some, the distance may not be sufficient. What are your thoughts? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Future Sister-in-Law Called Me an Ogre and Tried to Ruin My Wedding. I caught her, and now I doubt if my marriage can survive. My future sister-in-law has been making disparaging remarks about my appearance and referring to me as an ogre, but my fiancé has been insisting that she is only protective of him, until I discovered she has been secretly attempting to derail our wedding plans. Hello Reddit. I, a 28-year-old woman, am engaged to my beautiful fiancé, David, a 30-year-old man. We have been dating for 3 years and hope to marry later this year. The problem is with David's sister, Rachel, 33F, who has been making disparaging remarks about me in recent months. She has always been forthright, but lately it has crossed the line into outright cruelty. Rachel continually insinuates that I am not good enough for her brother, and she frequently criticizes my appearance. To give you an example, she once looked me up and down and said, "Wow, I always thought David would end up with someone slimmer and more put together. Guess he really changed his type." It was a really backhanded compliment. At a family dinner, she quipped to David in front of me, "Maybe love really is blind, huh?" and gave me a pointed look. David admonished her lightly, but she laughed it off as a joke. Another time, while we were discussing wedding dress shopping, Rachel snarked, "Make sure they have your size. We don't want an ogre bride." Yes. She used the word ogre while staring at me. These are only a few examples. Every time I meet her, there's a fresh insult buried in a joke or a concern. She'll make comments about my makeup, hair, weight, and even my career, hinting that I'm not ambitious enough for her successful family. It's as if she's tearing away everything about me. I've tried not to let it bother me, but it truly hurts. I am hardly a supermodel or anything, but I have never thought of myself as ugly. Hearing my prospective sister-in-law refer to me as an ogre or insinuate that I am unattractive and undeserving has begun to really undermine my confidence. I told my fiancé David how Rachel's statements were making me feel. He adores his sister and believes she is simply being protective. He keeps saying things like, "You know, Rachel has no filter. She doesn't really mean it, and she's tough on everyone at first. It'll get better." He also suggested that I'm taking her jokes too seriously, It's easy for him to say, he's not the one being referred to as an ogre. David has never told me I'm overreacting, but he consistently downplays her conduct, making me believe I am. He says stuff like, she had a very bad breakup ages ago and is wary of anyone dating me. For the record, she is now married to a nice person, as if it excuses her rudeness. He believes Rachel will ultimately come around and that she is simply looking out for him. Meanwhile, I'm beginning to dread every occasion when I'll encounter her, since I know I'll return home feeling bad about myself. For background, I've always been courteous to Rachel. I was impressed by how close she and David were when I first met them. I've attempted to bond with her by inviting her to lunch and asking her for wedding advice to make her feel included, but she either ignores me or makes snarky remarks. For example, when I asked if she wanted to go dress shopping with me and my mother, she remarked, "I suppose someone should be there to stop you from picking something tacky." I was surprised. I did not invite her again after that comment, and she now accuses me of excluding her from the wedding. I can't win. All of this has left me in a difficult situation. I adore David and genuinely want to marry him, but his sister seems determined to bring me down. I'm concerned that if this continues, it will spoil my connection with David and possibly the entire wedding. Part of me wonders whether she's intentionally attempting to break us up by undermining my self-esteem or inciting disputes between David and me. It may sound dramatic, but that is exactly how I feel after months of her antagonism. David does not view it this way. He admits Rachel may be harsh, but he believes I'm seeing malice where there is none. He constantly telling me to ignore her, or let it go because that's how she behaves with new people, but I'm not new anymore, and especially not to someone I'll soon call family. I've told him that he needs to stick up for me more firmly. He claims he'll talk to her, but I'm not sure whether he really understands or if he thinks I'm being overly sensitive. I'm starting to feel really alone in this. It's gotten to the point where I'm thinking about not inviting Rachel to our wedding, or at least not including her in the planning, because I don't want her negativity to ruin the best day of my life. But if I even mention it, I'm sure David will be upset. This is producing significant strain between us. So I need an outside perspective. Am I overreacting? Will I be the bad guy if I set strict boundaries or remove my prospective sister-in-law from wedding events due to her harsh behavior? I don't want to put a wedge in their family, but I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. Edit to add more information. After reading a few early comments, many of you have inquired about Jay's parents and how they feel. For the record, his parents are nice folks who have never been mean to me. They haven't seen most of Rachel's worst statements because she normally says them when no one else is listening or disguises them as jokes. I haven't directly informed my prospective in-laws about what she said. I hoped it would be resolved without involving the entire family. Also, some of you are curious whether this is about money or prestige. I do not think so. We are all middle-class professionals. There is no massive wealth disparity or anything. Rachel and I work in different fields, but I doubt that's all. It feels very personal against me. I honestly don't understand why she dislikes me so much. Update 1. Hey, several of you recommended me to have a serious conversation with David about setting boundaries and standing up for myself. Some suggested I postpone the wedding or seek marital counseling if he didn't take my concerns seriously. Believe me, those comments hit me hard. I realized I needed to be more firm on this. So, before our engagement celebration, which took place just a few days after my original post, I sat David down for a lengthy talk. I told him that I would not tolerate any more disrespect from his sister, and that I needed his support at the party and in the future. I expressly stated, if Rachel makes any nasty comments, I expect you to call her out right away. Please don't dismiss it. I also highlighted that the Reddit community agreed that her behavior is not typical protective sister behavior. In fact, several comments thought it was toxic and that David needed to wake up to it. He appeared surprised that virtual strangers were so invested, yet he listened. David stated that he had been trying to keep the peace and had not realized how much this was impacting me. He replied, "Okay, I'll talk to her. I'll ask her to be on her best behavior at the party, and I vow not to let her ruin the night for you." He maintained his calm demeanor, as if he didn't expect anything awful to happen. But hearing me to Sophie that I was seriously considering canceling her invitation must have made an impression. He truly appeared upset and begged, "Please don't make any decisions like that until I try to fix it." I decided to give it a chance because he was finally admitting there was an issue. Fast forward to the engagement party. To commemorate our forthcoming wedding, we held a small gathering at a nearby venue with our relatives and friends. I was nervous beforehand, but hopeful that things would go well, because David claimed he'd spoken with Rachel. He informed me earlier that day that Rachel had decided to be kind. I wasn't present for that talk, so I'm not sure how it went, or whether she rolled her eyes or not. At first everything was okay. Rachel welcomed me with a lovely grin when she arrived and even hugged me briefly. She had never embraced me before, which astonished me. I reasoned, okay, maybe she is trying. During the first half of the party she remained with her parents and other relatives. David was busy mingling, as did I, so we weren't together the entire time. I kept looking over and saw Rachel laughing and seemingly having fun. I began to relax a little, thinking that perhaps my worries were unfounded and that she would behave. Okay, I spoke too soon. Later in the evening, my maid of honor, Sophie, my best friend, drew me aside, angry. Sophie informed me that while I was conversing with some of David's cousins, she overheard Rachel disparaging me to a small group of people by the punch bowl. Rachel, according to Sophie, was in a huddle with two of her own friends, who she had apparently brought as her plus ones, and one of David's aunts. Sophie strolled by just in time to hear Rachel remark, "I was like an ogre to her brother." The context: David had allegedly mentioned that I appeared kind, and Rachel answered with something like, "She might be sweet, but let's be honest. My brother is Prince Charming, and he chose Fiona the yogurt." One of Rachel's pals chuckled and added, "Fiona at least turned into a princess eventually." Rachel responded, "I'm not holding my breath." Yes, she did say that at our engagement party, in front of other guests. When Sophie told me this, my stomach plummeted and my face flushed with embarrassment. I almost burst into tears right there. Sophie was furious and ready to yell at Rachel herself, but I asked her to wait until I decided out what to do. I took a minute to take some deep breaths. I didn't want to create a spectacle in front of everyone. It was meant to be a pleasant moment for us. Furthermore, David's old grandmother was present and I did not want a shouting match to bother her. I decided to find David first. I told him we needed to talk right now and drew him into a side hallway. I repeated exactly what Sophie had told me. I was in tears as I explained how Rachel publicly humiliated me at our own celebration. As I told him, I could see David's expression shift from bewildered to shocked to angry, but not clearly directed. He asked, "Are you sure she said that? That is incredible." I said, "I completely trusted Sophie, and it's exactly the type of insult she's been flinging at me in private." To his credit, David did not completely disregard it this time. He truly appeared irritated and stated, "I'm going to go talk to her." I trailed following and watched David draw Rachel apart in the corner of the room. I could not hear the discourse. The music was loud, and they kept their voices low. But I noticed David looking irritated, waving slightly, and Rachel shrugging. Rachel looked over at me from across the room, then mumbled something to David before walking away, grabbing her pocketbook. She left the party early, essentially storming away. David returned to me and stated, "I told her that was completely unacceptable. She said she was joking, but other people misheard what she said. I advised her to leave if she couldn't be respectful." Rachel apparently became angry and said something like, "Fine, if you're going to take her side and accuse me of ruining your party, I'll leave." So she did. David was outraged, but he also appeared to be upset about the outcome. I was ashamed that our engagement party had such drama, but I was also happy that David had finally seen, secondhand, how nasty Rachel could be. He wrapped his arm around me and apologized, adding, "I'm truly sorry. I never expected her to say something that harsh in public." He apologized repeatedly throughout the night. The party carried on, but everything was a blur for me. I managed to keep a grin on for the guests, and most of them had no idea what was wrong, with the exception of those who saw her leave abruptly. Sophie and a handful of my bridesmaids knew, and they were extremely supportive, forming a protective circle around me to keep me distracted with optimism. I am grateful for them. After the party, David and I had a lengthy conversation at home. He promised me that he had reprimanded Rachel and would not tolerate her insulting me again. I asked him exactly what he had said to her. He told me, "I love her, and you need to stop this behavior, or you won't be a part of our lives." Hearing that made me feel better. I've never seen him take such a firm stand with her. However, and this is a significant however, by the next morning, David had already downplayed the situation. He told me again that he had spoken with his parents, who were very furious that Rachel had departed in the middle of the celebration. His parents reportedly had no idea why she departed. Rachel did not inform them about the confrontation. Obviously, David informed them that Rachel made an offensive remark about me and that he called her out. They apologized to him and to me, but also implored him not to make impulsive decisions in the heat of the moment, such as not asking her to the wedding. They didn't know exactly what she said, only that it was an insult. Later that day, Rachel texted David, not me, a half-baked apology. According to what David showed me, it read, "Sorry I made a joke and caused tension at your party. I was simply trying to be amusing. I didn't expect you'd take it so seriously. I'll stay out of your hair for a while. I love you. That did not seem like much of an apology to me, more like gaslighting, calling it a comedy. I told David this. He groaned and admitted, yeah, it was a terrible apology. I'll speak with her again later. So that's where things are right now. Rachel is on a timeout of sorts. We have not seen or spoken with her since the party. David is verbally supportive, but I'm concerned that he'll soften with time because I can tell he despises disagreement with his sister. I haven't explicitly barred her from the wedding yet, but I'm really considering implementing your advice if she doesn't sincerely repent and substantially modify her conduct. For the time being, we'll wait and see whether she comes around on her own. David said he'll schedule a meeting with her shortly to clear the air and establish hard boundaries. I am not holding my breath. But we shall see. Update 2. Hello again everyone. I wish I could provide a pleasant report, but things have taken a peculiar and troubling turn. I'm still in disbelief as I write this. Following the engagement party event, I attempted to disconnect from the drama for a few days and concentrate on work and wedding preparations. David and I have been on edge, but he has tried to be normal and helpful. Rachel has maintained radio silence toward me. There was no direct apology to me, and David has yet to have the follow-up conversation with her since we wanted tempers to cool. I was still debating what to do about her and the wedding, while reading more of everyone's advice here. A number of comments on my last update pushed me to keep a watch on my wedding arrangements because several of you believed Rachel would try to sabotage things even more considering how antagonistic she has been. To be honest, I thought it seemed a little far-fetched. Who would go to such efforts to disrupt someone's wedding? A couple of days ago I received a phone call that confirmed those warnings painfully correct. My cell phone rang when I was at work on my lunch break. It was the bridal boutique where I was getting my wedding dress. The manager wanted to ensure that I did wish to cancel my final dress fitting appointment. Cancel my appointment. I almost dropped my phone. I told her, I definitely did not cancel it. I have an appointment next week to have the final fitting and pick up my wedding gown. This appointment was critical. I've been looking forward to this for months. Why should I cancel it? The boutique manager paused for a moment before saying, oh yeah, we received a call earlier from someone claiming to be you. She knew your full name and contact information and informed you that she needed to cancel the fitting and would reschedule it later. It sounded off, so I double-checked. Thank God she double-checked. I have no doubt about who that person was. I inquired as to the phone number from whence the call originated. The manager stated that it came from the number on file, which is my cell phone. That confused me at first. I wondered, is it possible they misheard? But she was pretty sure it showed my number on caller ID. I instantly accessed my phone's call record and reviewed it. I made no outgoing calls to the shop that day, or ever. I normally connect with them through email. Then I recalled something. Rachel approached me at the engagement party when I was talking to an uncle, saying, hey, can I take your phone for a sec? I suppose I forgot mine in the car and I'd like to take a group shot with the cousins. Without thinking, I unlocked my phone and handed it to her. There were a lot of people about, and I was in hostess mode, not thinking about the risk. She used it to take a shot and then returned it a few minutes later, saying, thanks. I'll send you the picture later. In retrospect, I have no idea what she did with my phone in those few minutes. Could she have swiftly located my bridal shop's phone number, perhaps through my emails or messages, or even Googled it, and contacted them pretending to be me? It sounds crazy, but how else would the call appear to come from my number? I started shivering as I realized this. I immediately informed the boutique manager that someone had impersonated me and that if anyone calls to make changes claiming to be me, either require a password or at least double-check via email. The manager was quite understanding. She sounded equally astonished. She informed me that my appointment was still scheduled and even placed a note on their system. Bride suspects scam caller. Do not cancel or amend anything without receiving immediate in-person confirmation. I thanked her warmly for contacting me. After hanging up, I sat in my car. I was on my break in the parking lot, shaking. I felt violated and outraged. Rachel had the audacity to do that. And to think, if the store hadn't noticed something was wrong and called me, I might have arrived next week only to discover my appointment canceled or my dress unavailable. I'm not even sure what her goal was, to delay obtaining my outfit, or to provoke a scene. It's just brutality. I quickly phoned David. He didn't answer, he was in a meeting at work, but I left him a voicemail and text message saying, we have a serious problem. Call me as soon as possible. It's about Rachel. He called back about 30 minutes later, sounding frantic. I told him everything. David's first reaction was, what? That is absurd. Why would she do that? He did not want to believe it. He suspected it was a hoax call or a mistake. I could detect skepticism in his voice, which frustrated me. I told him about the likelihood of Rachel using my phone at the party. He admitted she did borrow his phone that night, allegedly to play music over Bluetooth. Now that made me worry if she could have used his phone for something else, but that's another story. I could tell David was having trouble wrapping his brain around this. He said, "I know my sister was being cruel, but was she really attempting to mess with your dress? That is severe." I practically yelled, "Exactly, it is excessive, that is why I am so upset." He eventually remarked, "If she really did this, I'm speechless. It's completely unacceptable, but we need proof before accusing her." Proof? I mean, the circumstantial evidence is fairly compelling, but I don't have footage of her making the call. The boutique couldn't really give me with a recording or anything. Even if they did, I wouldn't be able to distinguish her voice over a short phone call. Rachel and I sound rather similar in tone. Ironically, we both have the same regional accent. Maybe this aided her mimicry. David asked if I wanted him to call Rachel and inquire about it. I told him I was hesitant since she'd probably deny it and then realize we were onto her. Some Reddit users suggested not tipping off a saboteur until you'd secured everything, so I encouraged David to hold off confronting her until we took some safeguards. I half expected him to disagree, but instead he agreed. When he heard how distraught I was, I believe he began to realize how serious the situation was. That evening, we sat down together and devised a plan, most of which was inspired by suggestions I received in Reddit comments. So, thank you all. Step 1. Secure all vendors. I spent the next day calling all of our wedding vendors and service providers to double-check our plans. I chatted with our caterer, venue planner, florist, photographer, DJ, and cake baker. I informed each of them that no changes or cancellations would be tolerated unless I or David personally showed there with ID or provided a pre-agreed password over the phone. Everyone was quite understanding. Wedding vendors have witnessed a lot. A couple of vendors did indicate that there were some unusual inquiries on our account. For example, our caterer stated that 2 days previously, they had a contact from me, asking about the penalty for substantially reducing the guest count at the last minute. The person did not truly cancel but was simply inquiring about the contract terms. I never made the call, and neither did David. So, further evidence that Rachel is snooping around. I created fresh passwords and secondary contact information for everything. I used a different moniker that would be difficult to guess for someone who didn't know me well, nothing like my pet's name or birthday. Step 2. Gather evidence about what transpired in the clothes shop. I asked the bridal boutique to send me a written summary of the cancellation call for my records. The manager stated in writing that on day at time, they received a phone call from someone pretending to be me using my phone number and requested that the appointment be cancelled. It's not hard evidence of Rachel, but it is documentation of the incident. David was present to assist me with calls, and I believe by the conclusion of this, he was beginning to understand the gravity of what was happening. He appeared both enraged and exhausted. I could tell he didn't want to think his sister could do such things, but there were no other options. He continued to shake his head, saying quietly, "I can't believe she's doing this. This is extremely psycho." To be honest, I had an emotional breakdown at that time. I've just started crying. David held me and apologized for what was occurring. I asked him, "Do you finally see it? What she has been doing to me?" He said that he did, was disgusted, and would deal with it. He seems genuinely shocked into action, which is a significant departure from before. I told him I wasn't ready to confront Rachel yet. I had a feeling that if we revealed what we knew, she would escalate, or deny and twist. I wanted to catch her red-handed if possible, or have undeniable evidence to show. A commenter on my last update suggested installing security cameras or recording a confession. I wasn't sure how to execute it, but having something substantial appealed to me. Update 3. Hello Reddit. I wish I could say that things have settled down, but they haven't. However, this time I bring the moment of truth. As several of you predicted, I eventually caught Rachel red-handed. It was both bizarre and satisfying, but also devastating in its own way. So, approximately a week after the dress shop event, David's family hosted a little celebration for his niece's birthday. This is Rachel's daughter's birthday party. Oh, I forgot to note that Rachel is married with a 5-year-old daughter, which may explain her conduct even more. She's an adult with a family, but she acts like a nasty mean girl. The party was held at my in-laws' place. After everything that had transpired, I didn't want to go. But I adore my little niece-to-be and did not want to disappoint her. Plus, David's parents had asked me, and I didn't want to create suspicion or cause family conflict by not attending a child's birthday party. David was unable to attend the party due to a business situation, a huge project deadline, and extremely awful timing. I was concerned about going without him, but he encouraged me and assured me that my parents and other siblings would be there. I doubt Rachel will try anything with them around. I wasn't so sure, but I went with all of my new safeguards in mind, keeping my phone clenched securely in my hand or zipped in my bag. The first hour or so of the celebration was fine. Rachel and I kept our distance from each other. We simply avoided each other completely. She was busy hosting the kids' games and chatting with her husband and friends. I helped my mother-in-law in the kitchen, played with the kids, and tried to unwind. Rachel would occasionally gaze at me, but she was never nice. I couldn't tell whether she was feeling guilty, angry, or plotting anything. It made me nervous, but I was determined to make it through the celebration calmly for the sake of my family. At one point, I went outside to the backyard where the children were playing on a swing set. I was speaking with David's other sister-in-law, his brother's wife, when I remembered I had left my phone inside on the kitchen counter. I had put it down for a minute to help serve cake, but then became distracted when I followed everyone outdoors. When I remembered, a small alarm bell went off in my thoughts. I excused myself and went back inside the home. There were a few relatives in the living room, but Rachel was not among them. I checked the kitchen. My phone was no longer on the counter, where I knew I'd left it. My heart skips a beat. I inquired as to whether my mother-in-law had seen my phone. She hadn't, but she said, "Oh, I just saw Rachel pass through here a moment ago." I knew instantly. I just knew. I hurried quickly down the hall toward the bedrooms. My in-laws' house has one story. I overheard a low voice. It was Rachel's voice, and she was saying something like, "Yes, that is correct. The caterer for the wedding of my last name and fiancé's last name." My heart was beating out of my chest. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and she was there. Rachel was standing near the desk, holding my phone to her ear. She stared at me, shocked, her eyes wide. I must have been a sight. I was shivering from excitement and rage. I walked closer and exclaimed loudly, "Rachel, what the heck are you doing with my phone?" She froze for a second, then had the audacity to raise a finger as if to warn me to wait since she was on the phone. She stammered into the phone, I'll have to call you back," before hanging up. I was so furious that I grabbed the phone from her hand. I didn't even consider it. I just acted right away. I saw on the screen that the call was actually to our caterer. Their name was right there in the recent calls list, as was the ongoing call timer, which was showing roughly 2 minutes before she hung up. She had actually ventured to call our caterer, likely to cancel or change our catering order, while at her own child's birthday party, using my phone, which she had stolen from the kitchen. I am speechless at the ridiculous levels here. Once I had my phone, I let loose. I said something like, "I knew it. I knew you were tampering with my wedding. First my clothing, and now this. What's wrong with you?" Rachel did not even deny it. Instead she shouted, "I don't care. You aren't good enough for my brother. I will not let you ruin his life." I practically shrieked, "How does canceling my wedding plans keep his life from being ruined? Are you out of your mind?" She continued saying, "You need to leave. You shouldn't be here. You are not a member of this family, and you never will be." It was like a floodgate of her actual feelings had opened. It became evident that, in her twisted thinking, she believed she was protecting her brother from me by destroying our wedding. Our noisy argument had attracted attention. David's dad and a few other family members came in the corridor, puzzled. My mother-in-law was like, "What's going on?" I turned to them and said, "Rachel is undermining our wedding. She literally used my phone to attempt to cancel our caterer." Rachel yelled, "She's lying." Despite the fact that I was holding the evidence and waving it about, my phone still showed the caterer's number on the screen. She then changed tactics and said, "I was assisting you. I was just making a brief call to check on something for you." I yelled back, "Check what exactly? How much can you muck things up?" The situation was chaotic. My father-in-law sharply told us both to relax and asked for the phone. I handed him my phone and told him to look at the last phone number. "It is the caterer. I didn't make the call. She did." He looked at the phone and saw the number and name, which we had saved as the caterer's name. I'll never forget how he gazed back at Rachel. It was a combination of shock and disappointment. My mother-in-law appeared to catch on and gasped, covering her lips. She asked Rachel, "Did you really?" Rachel burst into tears at this time, not sure if she was angry or just upset at being discovered. She said something like, "Fine. Yes, I attempted to cancel several things for his own good. This wedding should not happen." There were more raised voices throughout. My father-in-law told Rachel to follow him into the other room right now. My mother-in-law attempted to console the crying children, who had fled inside due to the loud noise. The family members were all either surprised, silent, or rushing the kids back outside to play. It was quite awkward and tense. I was fighting back tears. I realized I didn't want to be there any longer. I walked straight out the front door, got into my car, and drove away. In retrospect, I probably should have stayed to gently explain to my in-laws what had happened, but I was in full fight-or-flight mode, and flight prevailed. As soon as I drove away, I fell into tears and cried all the way home. I texted David one message. I caught Rachel in the middle of canceling our wedding plans. I left the party. Call me as soon as you can. He was already trying to call me since he had a bunch of missed calls from the caterer on his phone. The caterer had attempted to call him when they were abruptly disconnected from me, most likely to confirm what Rachel was telling them. David had put two and two together and left work early, desperately attempting to contact me. When I came home, I took his phone and simply explained everything that had transpired. David was quiet for a long time, then he just stated, "I'm returning home right now." He arrived approximately 20 minutes later. He drew me into an embrace and continued saying, "I'm so sorry." He had spoken with his father on the way over, so he had a rudimentary summary of the aftermath at the party. Apparently, after I left, my father-in-law ripped into Rachel in private. According to what David heard, it wasn't pretty. Rachel was virtually caught dead to rights, with no defense. Her husband, my brother-in-law, was also furious with her. He had no idea she was doing this. In reality, Eric apologized to my in-laws and left the party early with their children because he was ashamed and irritated with Rachel, so the party sort of went apart after that. What a spectacular birthday for the poor niece, though I believe the little kids were generally kept in the dark, but they did get cake and presents. David's parents were terribly distraught. They did not fight or make excuses for Rachel when speaking with David. In fact, both of his parents called me later that night to apologize for their daughter's actions. They sounded extremely humiliated and sincerely sorry. This was a relief, to be honest. Aside from the one bad apple, I had supportive prospective in-laws. But let me get to the worst part. David's initial reaction when the dust had fallen. When he arrived home that night and we spoke, I could sense he was struggling. We sat down, and I reminded Rachel of all she had done wrong. Now that I had practically seen her doing it, there was no way for him to doubt or minimize anything. He looked frightened and kept repeating he felt foolish for not noticing it sooner. However, when I communicated how profoundly this had wounded me and how I wasn't sure I could move forward if he didn't completely break relations with his sister, at least for now, he became defensive. He did not defend her, but he appeared reluctant and replied, "She is my sister. I need to know why she did this." That kind of made me snap. I shouted, "Is the why even important? Look what she did, and you're not exactly on my side here." He swiftly said, No, I'm on your side." "I don't condone any of this," he said, admitting that part of him was shocked and waiting for an explanation or misunderstanding. "Really?" After she basically confessed in front of everyone. I was astounded that he still believed there might be any reason. This resulted in possibly the worst brawl we'd ever had. I told him straight out that I might contemplate marrying him if he couldn't fully support me and keep his sister accountable. I stated, "I am your future wife," and she attacked me and our relationship in the most deceptive manner. "I need you to have my full support or I can't do this." I may have also said something like, "Grow a spine and cut the cord, David, or you'll lose me." It was harsh, but I was at my breaking point. David, to his credit, did not become furious with me. He began crying. I'd only seen this man weep once before, so seeing his tears shattered my heart. He expressed regret that it took something so awful to make him see reality, and that he felt he had failed me. We were both emotionally weary by then. He begged me, "Please don't call off the wedding." I told him I wasn't going to make any decisions like that right now, but I needed to see tangible action from him to protect me from his family's toxicity. He vowed no more excuses for Rachel, no more contact with her until, perhaps, she significantly changed, which I doubt, and she would not attend our wedding or any other celebrations. He said he will speak with her and make this clear. I simply nodded and replied, "You understand what you need to do. I'm going to hold you to it." That night I slept at my sister's house because I needed some space and someone to talk to in person. David understood and let me go, even though he urgently wanted me to stay. My sister was stunned by everything. She was previously familiar with some of the details, but the entire story stunned her. She took me out for a late-night milkshake run to help me relax, which was somewhat beneficial. So, yes, I caught Rachel red-handed. The entire family knows now, and David finally believes me. I know a lot of you will probably tell me to cancel the wedding or go cold turkey. Trust me, I have been thinking about everything. Rachel will be out of our lives for the foreseeable future, that is all I know. There's no chance she'll come to our wedding, if we even get one. The question that remains is primarily about David. After all this, can I trust him to put me first? I love him, and I believe he has finally woken up to the truth. However, the fact that it has gone this far will take some time for me to forgive. I'm spending a few days away from the situation to clear my mind. David and I agreed to put any wedding planning on hold until we could properly work things out, and to double-check that all of our vendors are secure following that attempted call. I might update again, but I need to rest. I caught my wife planning to cheat with her friend's help. I moved our savings, filed for divorce, and refused to be her backup plan. Hello Reddit. Never imagined I'd be posting here, but life has a strange sense of humor. I'm 34 and work in industrial equipment sales. Consider conveyor belts and packaging machines, the exciting equipment that keeps warehouses operating. I've been with my employer for 8 years and worked my way up from inside sales to regional manager. My wife Laura, 32F, is a part-time yoga instructor who occasionally does freelance graphic design. We've been married 3 years and together for 6. We met at a brewery on trivia night. She was on the team that beat mine because, evidently, I am bad at 2000s pop culture trivia questions. Who knew? We acquired a robust prenup since I had seen too many of my co-workers' finances wrecked in divorces, and Laura was surprisingly okay about it. She stated she understood our need to protect what we each brought into the marriage. Laura has been driving a 2019 that has been experiencing transmission troubles for months. Not catastrophic failure, but the kind of sporadic issues that make you wonder if this is the day you'll take an Uber to work. She had been hinting that she wanted something newer and more reliable. She started being more explicit about 2 months ago. They showed me listings for a certified pre-owned Subaru Outback. Nothing outrageously costly, roughly $28,000. The problem was that we didn't have that much cash on hand because we'd been aggressively paying off my student loans and mortgage. But I thought she deserved something reliable. I could work some overtime to make it happen. So I started accepting any overtime opportunity, weekends, evening calls, and covering for coworkers. For nearly 2 months, I worked 65 to 70-hour weeks and saved every extra penny in what I termed the car fund. Laura appeared to understand. She stated she admired how hard I worked. Rachel, her best friend, would come over to keep her company when I was working late. I am divorced, work for a healthcare startup, and have always been cool. They'd have wine evenings, watch their shows, and do whatever they wanted. Last Tuesday I completed a site visit early. What should have taken 3 hours took only 20 minutes. I arrived home around 7:30 p.m., rather than my normal 10 p.m. I heard Laura and Rachel's voices in the kitchen. That's when I heard Rachel mention time, and Laura respond that she had to be careful about when she made her move. At first, I assumed they were organizing a surprise or work project. Laura then mentioned that she had been thinking about it a lot lately, especially with me working overtime, and that this would be the perfect moment to see what else was out there. Rachel agreed. Laura deserved to investigate her alternatives, he said. She even volunteered to help with the logistics. Laura was concerned about the financial repercussions, but Rachel told her that she could always return to her current arrangement if the new thing didn't work out. That I'd probably accept her back because I'm too polite for my own good. That's when my blood turned cold. This was not a birthday party plan. It was about my wife preparing to cheat and using our marriage as a backup plan. I discreetly departed, sat in my truck for 10 minutes, and then drove for an hour. I returned home and resumed my normal behavior. Laura hinted throughout the next few days that individuals needed space, that they loved one another but wanted to explore other connections. Subtle, right? She eventually had the talk on Friday night, saying we might have married too early. We were 28 and 31. She loved me but wasn't sure if she was in love. I suggested staying at Rachel's for a while. If we were meant to be, we'd make our way back. I asked whether there was anyone else. She said, "Of course not. She'd never do it to me. She simply needed to be alone and figure herself out." Rachel had offered to let her rest at her house, and perhaps they could take a short vacation somewhere to clear her mind. So I answered, "Okay, if that's what she needed, I understand. I'd keep working, saving money, and giving her all the time she needed to figure things out." What I didn't tell her was that I had already called a divorce attorney Thursday morning. Laura moved out on Sunday, taking her clothing, laptop, books and other necessities for a temporary separation, hugged me at the door, and expressed her hope that we might work things out. That this was not always the end, but rather a stop to gather clarity. Monday morning, I went to the bank and transferred all of our savings, including the $12,000 vehicle fund I had been building, to a new account in my name only. Thanks to our prenup, I was well within my rights. Her name was not on my work accounts, and I left the joint bank account alone save for transferring my direct deposit. Tuesday I had the divorce paperwork prepared, nothing malicious, just a straightforward dissolution based on irreconcilable differences. It's very clean now, thanks to the prenup. We all keep what we brought in. If we sell the house, we will split the proceeds. There is no alimony. Laura texted me on Wednesday, asking if I had any ideas about us and if I was ready to have a serious chat about improving on our relationship. I responded that I had a lot of views and was definitely ready for a chat. Could she come on Thursday evening? She seems excited. She stated that she had also been thinking about our future and was ready to discuss it. Thursday evening, she arrived with takeaway and began discussing how her time away had made her realize how much she missed our life together. Maybe she was overthinking things, and sometimes you just need to take a step back to appreciate what you have. That was when I gave her the divorce papers. I've never seen a face transform so quickly. She moved from nervous and delighted to puzzled and angry and within 15 seconds. I started wondering what this was supposed to mean, if it was a joke, and why I was being so theatrical about her wanting some space. I told her I understood precisely what kind of space she was seeking for, and I had decided to offer her all the space in the world indefinitely. She demanded to know what I was talking about. So I mentioned that I had overheard her chat with Rachel the previous Tuesday. Not everything, because I didn't stay for the entire planning session, but enough to grasp she was preparing to cheat and expected me to be waiting here like a loyal golden retriever once she had exhausted her alternatives. The expression on her face said everything I needed to know. She tried to pretend that I had misunderstood, taken things out of context, and that she had never done anything. I thought that was fantastic since it meant the divorce would be even smoother. There were no issues from infidelity, simply two people who sought different things. Then she spoke about money, specifically whether she could use the savings account to get her own house and possibly purchase a reliable automobile since she'd be starting over. I told her that the savings account had been closed. The money I'd earned working overtime for the preceding 2 months was now in an account she couldn't access since, ironically, I decided not to fund her exploration phase after all. That's when she became quite angry. She claimed I was being controlling and that denying her access to money she relied on was financial abuse. I reminded her that according to our prenup, the money I made was mine, and she had never contributed to the car fund she had planned to spend for her independence trip. She left about 9 p.m., she's taking her supper with her. So, Reddit, AITA. A part of me wonders if I should have addressed her with the overheard chat first, given her the opportunity to explain, or called it off. Maybe I misunderstood and she was just going through a quarter-life crisis unrelated to adultery. But, honestly, the more I think about it, the more certain I am that I heard exactly what I believe I did. I'm not out to ruin her life or leave her bankrupt. She's got a job. She can stay with Rachel, and she is an adult capable of arranging her own transportation and housing. I just don't see why I should pay for her self-discovery adventure, especially since it appears to involve examining other people's mattresses. But perhaps I'm being overly severe. Maybe I should have attempted to work it out. Let me know your thoughts, Reddit. I have some decisions to make about next moves. A few days later, an update was posted. So Reddit, you had some thoughts. And by some thoughts, I mean my inbox overflowed like a packaging line during the peak holiday season. The general consensus seems to be that I was NTA, and that I should quit second-guessing myself about what I had heard. A number of you noted that Laura's reaction when I handed her the divorce papers essentially proved everything. If she had been innocent, she would have been confused and hurt, rather than instantly concerned about money and requesting access to accounts. That struck home. An innocent individual would have been saddened by divorce papers without considering their financial choices. Several individuals urged that I document everything and try to get further evidence, but I'm not interested in playing private investigator. I heard exactly what I heard. Her reaction proved this. And I am not going to start following her around with a camera or examining her phone records. That is not the type of person I want to be. Some of you cautioned me that Laura would most likely respond with tears and promises once she understood I was serious. It turns out Reddit has prophetic powers, because that is exactly what happened. Laura arrived at my residence at 6:30 a.m. on Friday, one day after I served her papers. I was getting ready for work when I heard someone beating on the door, as if they wanted to wake up the entire neighborhood. She really wanted to talk this time. No games, no drama. She revealed that she had been considering other possibilities, but seeing the divorce papers made her realize she was afraid of commitment and didn't want anybody else. that I was the best thing that ever happened to her, and that she'd been an idiot. I told her I appreciated her honesty, but the ship had departed. If she wanted to improve our marriage, she might have done so before organizing her affair with Rachel. Not with Rachel, but with Rachel's help. That's when things became interesting. She claimed Rachel had been filling her mind with thoughts about how she was settling and deserved to discover what else was available. Rachel was furious about her own divorce and projected it onto Laura's marriage. Laura would never have gone through with anything if I hadn't jumped right into divorce. Was there a specific someone she'd been planning to explore with, or was this more of a general shopping expedition? I inquired. She was quiet for a long time, then confessed there was a guy from her yoga studio who'd been flirting with her for months. Nothing had happened, but she was curious what it would be like. Rachel had been pressing her to find out, telling her that life was too short to spend wondering what if forever. So, there it was. She had a particular goal in mind, rather than just theoretical exploration. I congratulated her for finally being honest, but told her it didn't alter anything. She began crying and asked if we could attempt counseling, maybe work through this together, because tossing away 6 years was insane. But Reddit, here's something numerous of you mentioned that really resonated with me. She was not sorry she had planned to cheat. She was sorry she was caught. If I hadn't caught the chat, she would have gone ahead with her plan and expected me to be here waiting after she finished sampling the items. I told her I'd think about it, partly to persuade her to leave so I could go to work, but I'd already decided. Another issue happened over the weekend, and this is where some of your advice came in handy. Laura attempted to enter our joint checking account and discovered that I had changed my direct deposit. She contacted me Saturday morning and asked about it, and I explained that because we were getting divorced, it made logical to completely separate our funds. She became agitated and stated that she needed money for basic necessities and that she couldn't live just on her yoga revenue. I informed her that, according to the prenup, we were each responsible for our own expenses during the separation process. She might work longer hours, take on additional graphic design clients, or find another alternative. Several of you had advised me to be prepared for her to say she couldn't support herself and required spousal support, so I was prepared for the conversation. This turned out to be good counsel. Rachel contacted me on Monday morning. This was the first time we had spoken since the whole affair began. She wanted me to know that Laura was truly hurting, and that maybe I was being too harsh. Laura had made a mistake, but she didn't deserve to have her entire life ruined because of it. I asked Rachel if she believed I deserved to have my entire life blown up because of Laura's error. If she believed I should have quietly sponsored Laura's affair and patiently waited for her to decide whether she wanted to keep me or trade me in. Rachel became quiet, then said that she hadn't realized I'd overheard their chat and that she might have given Laura inappropriate advice. I told Rachel that Laura was an adult who made her own decisions, and that if she was having trouble right now, she could work out her own solutions. I was no longer her backup plan or safety net. Rachel attempted to claim that Laura never actually did anything, that thinking about something and doing it were two distinct things. I showed out that preparing something and accomplishing it were not that different. If I hadn't found out, Laura would have carried out her plan. The talk ended abruptly after that. So, Reddit, following your counsel, I'm keeping the course. There will be no reconciliation conversations, counseling, or, let's work this out together. I'm proceeding with the divorce and letting Laura sort out her own life. Several folks inquired if I felt awful about serving her papers exactly when she was coming back to work things out. Honestly, no. She did not return, because she realized she loved me. She returned because whatever she thought she wanted didn't work out, and I was the safe alternative. That's not love, it's convenience. My next update will most likely come after I hear back from my lawyer about the timetable and next actions. Thank you for all the reality checks, Reddit. It's been good to have outside viewpoints. Update 2. Reddit. You gorgeous disaster of a community. Your advice remains shockingly accurate. Remember how you predicted Laura's escalation when she realized the polite approach wasn't working? Well, you'll see. Monday started as usual enough. If you can call this a normal circumstance. I was catching up on work that I had neglected amid the domestic drama when I received a call from my HR department. Someone had called them, alleging I was going through a difficult divorce and might be emotionally unstable at work. Now that Reddit knows I work in industrial equipment sales, my clients are warehouse managers, operations directors, and other practical individuals who are more concerned with whether their conveyor belts operate than with my personal life. But HR must take these issues seriously. So I had to sit through a somewhat awkward chat regarding my emotional state and whether I needed time off or therapy services. I briefly stated the scenario. Divorce proceedings are handled by lawyers, and there is no impact on job performance. My manager backed me up, pointing out that my numbers had been better than usual. Overtime apparently pays off. But it was still embarrassing. It took me approximately 30 seconds to figure out where the call came from. Laura texted me on Tuesday, wondering if we could meet to talk logistics. I consented against my better judgment, and most likely against Reddit's recommendations. We figured we needed to iron out some practical issues regardless. A big mistake. Laura arrived looking like she'd been living off energy drinks and tension, which could have been the case. She began by apologizing, saying she was sorry about the HR situation, but she was desperate and didn't know how else to gain my attention. I informed her that contacting my workplace was extremely inappropriate and asked her what logistics we needed to discuss that couldn't be handled through lawyers. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She was pregnant. Reddit, I'll spare you the suspense. After about 10 minutes of stress and fast mental math, I concluded the timeline was incorrect. We hadn't been intimate since before she moved out, which was only 3 weeks ago. It was too early for her to know, too early for symptoms to appear, and simply too early for anything. It could have happened a long time ago, but she didn't develop any bumps that I could see. When I brought this up, she became defensive, saying she'd been feeling strange for a while but didn't want to bother me while I was working so much overtime. That she had taken a test that morning, and the results were positive. I asked her if she wanted to go to the doctor with me and confirm it with some kind of test, because this was such crucial news that would change everything about our divorce. She said she wasn't ready for it yet and needed time to digest it, but she wanted me to know that it altered everything, and that we owed it to our child to try to work things out. I told her we'd need medical confirmation before making any significant choices, and that if she was indeed pregnant, we'd work out co-parenting arrangements with the lawyers. Her face fell. I believe she expected me to call off the divorce and hurry back into reconciliation mode. I received a call on Wednesday from a number I did not know. It turned out to be the yoga studio guy Laura had mentioned she was hoping to explore with. He wanted to tell me that he had no idea Laura was married when she was flirting with him, and that when he found out, he completely backed off. Laura had apparently informed him we were separated and getting divorced, but when Laura expressed interest, an acquaintance stated we were still married. He felt awful about the entire situation and wanted to clear the air. I appreciated the call and assured him he had done nothing wrong. Laura had misrepresented our situation, and he did the correct thing by backing off after he saw the truth. But it validated something I'd suspected about Laura's timeline. She'd been building the groundwork with this guy for weeks, possibly months. This was not a sudden loss of faith in our marriage. Laura texted me on Thursday, wondering if I had thought about the pregnancy and what it meant for us. I replied that I would be pleased to discuss co-parenting once she had received medical confirmation. She quickly called me, upset that I was being cold about our prospective child. I clarified that I wasn't being frigid, but rather sensible. If she was pregnant, we'd handle it appropriately. But I wasn't making decisions based on a home pregnancy test and some vague symptoms. She hung up on me. Friday was the most fascinating day. I returned home from work to discover Laura's car in my driveway and Laura sitting on my porch steps. She appeared to have been waiting for nearly an hour. She said she needed to tell me the truth about everything because she couldn't continue living with the lies. So I sat down to listen. It turns out that the pregnancy was a hoax. She had hoped it would make me reconsider the divorce, but she knew I'd insist on medical confirmation, and the whole thing would come apart. The relationship with the yoga guy was real, but it was more substantial than she had previously revealed. They'd been texting for months, had a few coffee dates, and she'd planned to sleep with him during their trial separation. Rachel had been encouraging the entire process, telling Laura that she deserved to experience what else was out there before settling down forever. But when Laura attempted to make a move, yoga guy backed off since he discovered she was still married. That's when she realized her magnificent idea wasn't going to turn out the way she had hoped. She claimed that receiving the divorce papers served as a wake-up call that she was about to lose the best thing in her life for a ridiculous fantasy, that she'd been watching too many movies and taking too much terrible counsel from Rachel. She asked if I could forgive her and start over. To be honest, watching her so broken down was difficult. This was not the confident woman who had requested room to consider her options. This was someone who realized they had ruined their life for nothing. But you know what? Several of you had warned me about this very scenario, that she'd return with tears and confessions once she realized the repercussions were serious, and that I shouldn't allow transitory remorse overshadow the underlying issue. She was willing to betray me and considered me to be her backup plan. I told her I admired her candor, but it didn't change the issue. She'd made these decisions after months of preparation, not in a moment of weakness, and the only reason she was confessing now was because her plan failed and she was facing actual consequences. She questioned what she should do now, where she should go, and how she could reconstruct her life. I told her they were the things she should have asked herself before blowing up ours. She left about 9 p.m., has not contacted me since. Rachel, however, called me on Saturday morning. Laura had apparently been staying with her and was in a really horrible state. Rachel wanted to know if I was okay with destroying Laura's life or if I would consider giving mercy. I informed Rachel that Laura had destroyed her own life and that I was simply declining to go down with a ship. That if Rachel truly cared about Laura's well-being, she'd assist her in determining how to proceed rather than pressuring me to help. Rachel accused me of being heartless. I stated I was being practical. The conversation did not last long after that. So, Reddit, divorce is proceeding. No more fabricated pregnancies or workplace harassment. And I'm apparently the villain for refusing to assume the role of backup husband. Your counsel to stay firm and avoid manipulative tactics was right on. It's been tempting to feel terrible, especially seeing Laura so unhappy. But you were correct. She is not sad because she has injured me. She is upset by the implications of her decisions. Thank you for keeping me calm throughout this, Reddit. Update 3. Reddit, remember how I thought things were calming down? Yeah, that was wonderfully naive of me. Your collective wisdom about Laura not going gently into that good night was once again shockingly correct. This week provided a masterclass in why you should never underestimate someone's ability to solve creative problems when they are up against a wall. It began on Monday when I received a call from my lawyer. Laura had filed a motion claiming that I was hiding assets and requesting temporary spousal support while the divorce was proceeding. According to her filing, I abruptly transferred huge sums of money out our joint accounts, leaving her unable to support herself. My lawyer wasn't concerned. Our prenuptial agreement addresses this exact scenario, and I have confirmation that the money came from my extra job. But it resulted in more legal bills and delays, which I'm beginning to believe was the objective. Tuesday saw an unusual development. My mortgage company called and inquired about my intentions regarding the residence. Someone phoned them, pretending to be representing both parties in the divorce, and inquiring about options for one spouse to take full responsibility for the mortgage. That person was not my lawyer. Laura had called them directly, introducing herself as Mrs. Thompson, she never took my last name, and inquiring about the procedures for removing a spouse from the mortgage. She had given them our case number, to which she should not have had access, and attempted to obtain information on refinancing alternatives. The mortgage business was unable to provide her with any information without legal authority, but they wanted to clarify with me that her question was authentic. I had to clarify that my wife was not authorized to conduct inquiries on my behalf, and certainly, she was probably attempting to figure out if she could still claim the house despite our prenuptial agreement. On Wednesday, things got extremely imaginative. I arrived home from work to find my neighbor waiting for me in her front yard. She's a retired teacher, probably in her 70s, and has always been cordial in the neighborly sense, where we talk about the weather and yard work but don't know each other's life stories. Our neighbor wanted to inform me that a young woman had stopped by that afternoon to ask inquiries about me. Had I been having loud arguments recently? Has she ever seen other women come and go? Was I the type of person that appeared controlling or aggressive? The young woman described herself as a social worker making a routine check on a domestic issue. She'd been quite nice and professional, but the neighbor thought the whole situation strange because she'd never noticed any signs of domestic trouble. Our neighbor appears to be sharper than she looks. She'd asked the social worker for identification and business cards, but the woman became evasive and swiftly fled. The neighbor described the woman, and it sounded exactly like Rachel. I thanked the neighbor for the heads up and promptly contacted my lawyer. He stated that while this was technically harassment, and that we could file a complaint, it might be more useful to capture everything and use it to explain Laura's actions if she tried to say I was unreasonable. On Thursday, I made the decision to be proactive. I called Rachel personally. Rachel attempted to act innocent at first, claiming she had no idea what I was talking about. When I mentioned the neighbor's description and the social worker's story, Rachel became defensive and said she was only trying to help her buddy. I informed Rachel that impersonating a social worker was potentially unlawful and that contacting my workplace, mortgage company and neighbors was considered harassment, that if she wanted to help Laura, she should encourage her to focus on moving forward rather than attempting to sabotage the divorce. Rachel claimed I was being paranoid and that she had done nothing illegal, and that Laura was struggling and only trying to grasp her legal alternatives. I informed him that Laura had hired a lawyer to help her understand her legal choices, and that asking neighbors about domestic abuse was not a legal tactic, it was desperation. Rachel hung up on me. Friday marked the weekend's grand finish. This time, I was working late and legally. We had a packaging line emergency at a food processing factory and returned home at 10 p.m. to find my front door slightly open. Reddit. I've seen enough real crime shows to know you don't just stroll into a house and open the door. I contacted the cops from my truck and waited for their arrival. Officers arrived and conducted a walkthrough of the house. There were no traces of forced entry or missing items that they could see, but I discovered something interesting. A pair of keys is on my kitchen counter. It turned out they were Laura's house keys. She had obviously let herself in, glanced about, and then left the keys behind. There is no comment or explanation. Only the keys. The cops inquired whether I wanted to submit a report. I replied, no, not this time, but I wanted it documented that Laura had been in the house without permission and had returned her keys. One of the police inquired whether this was a domestic incident. I gave her a brief version. The officer stated that divorces often cause people to behave in ways that surprise everyone, even themselves. She suggested that I change my locks and consider installing a security camera to protect myself if things progressed further. On Saturday morning, I changed the locks. I spent the afternoon installing a rudimentary doorbell camera system, which will record who comes and goes. Monday morning, I received a call from my lawyer with both good and bad news. Laura's spousal support motion was refused, which is good news. The prenuptial agreement stood up exactly as expected, and the judge was unimpressed with her argument that I was concealing assets. This is bad news. Laura's lawyer had requested an extension, arguing that they needed more time to analyze financial documents, which would result in further delays and legal bills, but probably not enough to influence the final verdict. My lawyer stated this was rather common in contested divorces. Laura was probably buying time, expecting I would become tired of the legal bills and agree to a settlement. He inquired whether I wanted to pursue mediation or if I preferred to see it through to the conclusion. Your advice has been especially useful on Reddit. A few months ago, I might have considered mediation just to get it over with. But you've continually pointed out that giving in to manipulation only fosters more of it. I instructed my lawyer to see it through to the end, so that is where we stand. Laura appears to have moved on from fake pregnancies and workplace harassment to amateur detective work and break-ins. Rachel is cosplaying as a social worker, and I'm discovering that divorce fosters creativity in individuals you never knew existed. Thank you for keeping me grounded throughout this Reddit. Your counsel to expect escalation and not take it personally has proven more useful than you realize. Without this communal reality check, I might have made myself feel bad about Laura's breakdown or Rachel's harassing campaign. I lost 3 babies. My sister-in-law took the names I had chosen and gave them to her own children. Now she tampered with my vitamins, causing me to miscarry. For years I was infertile, and not just any infertility. I was the false hope. Infertile. I suffered 3 miscarriages, all during the 2nd trimester. Fortunately, everyone was incredibly supportive, with the exception of my sister-in-law, who stroked my hair and promised to always be there for me the first time I cried on her lap. She promised me that when my niece, her baby, was born, I would be her godmother. I even began to consider her one of my closest friends. Fast forward 2 weeks to her baby shower. That's where she revealed her baby's name. As soon as she uttered it, vomit surged up my throat. It was Lila, the same name as my unborn daughter. When I challenged her, all she replied was, "Well, it's not like you were going to use it," shrieking like a pig on fire. Her words felt like daggers. When my husband came over and asked what was going on, I informed him, but instead of getting angry, he laughed. Men can be fairly naive at times. So I waited until we were in the car driving home to re-explain the problem. And my husband was the love of my life, but he was also passive since he grew up as the family's scapegoat, the sort who got robbed on the street and apologized for not having enough money to give. "That's just how she is, honey," he sighed. So I convinced myself that at least my unborn daughter's name would live on in someone else's child, and I concentrated on improving my fertility by being a healthy Pilates princess, but it never worked. A year and a half later, another baby died in my womb. A few weeks later, I was standing in a Walgreens aisle when I noticed it. My sister-in-law had created a post to remember her 2nd son. The message said as follows: "Welcome, baby Ethan. Thanks to Clara, my name, for the name inspiration. Her loss is my gain." This was followed by the pregnant and skull emojis. By the time she took the name of my 3rd loss, Amelia, I was numb. She used to email me nursery photographs with phrases like, "Bet you wish this could be for your Amelia." My spouse defended her, saying I was being overly sensitive about names and pictures. After 4 years, I stopped hoping for a child. Vanessa was expecting her 4th kid and joked at family meals about which name she should steal next. Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. That night, something inside me snapped. If she wanted a different name, I'd give her one she'd never forget. I waited until the next family gathering before breaking down in tears. I informed Vanessa confidentially that I had uncovered something remarkable in my late mother's diary, including a hidden middle name she never revealed to anyone. Serafina. I explained that it meant sacred kid in an archaic tongue. I even made phony journal pages and showed her a Pinterest board about commemorating deceased grandparents with baby names. Vanessa accepted the name and ran. She told to everyone that she was naming her daughter Serafina Rose to respect our family's hidden past. And this revenge plan worked well for me until 8 months later, when the universe gave me a curveball. I was pregnant in the 3rd trimester. I nearly burst into tears of pleasure. No more memorials, no more questioning if there was anything really wrong with me. My husband and I had been waiting for the announcement, not wanting to raise our expectations. That same week, we received the text. Vanessa invited us to her baby shower. I wore a flowy garment that covered everything. My husband supported my choice to stop issuing an F. Vanessa had gone all out for this shower, bigger than any other. The entire family was present, as were her mother blog readers who had been following baby Serafina's progress for months. Vanessa was in the middle of delivering a speech about uncovering this treasured family name. I stood up. Actually, Vanessa, I have something to share as well, I explained, smoothing my dress over my now obvious belly. The room went completely silent. Vanessa's mouth dropped open in mid-sentence. My mother-in-law spilled her champagne glass. 29 weeks today, I said, stroking my belly. We wanted to be sure this time. The room exploded with yells and congrats. Vanessa's face had lost its color. That was when my husband, the family saint, stepped up and raised his hand. Vanessa, you were saying something about Serafina, about all that research you did. Vanessa's face had changed from white to red. Yes, it means sacred child in ancient. That's so weird, he said, taking out his phone. Because when I Google Serafina, all I get are medical websites about constipation relief. I had to grab my nose to prevent myself from giggling. The rest of the room remained silent. I grabbed my husband's hand and walked away. It was a proud occasion for all 3 of us, but I was sound asleep by 4 a.m. I felt a strong pain in my stomach, something I had experienced 3 times before. My husband and I went to the hospital, but I already knew the truth. It was a miscarriage. It turned out that one of my midnight prenatal candies had been changed with something harmful to my kid. I knew Vanessa was behind it. I couldn't sleep for several days following that. Every time I closed my eyes, I remembered Vanessa's smug expression during the baby shower. The cops claimed they could not verify anything regarding the vitamins. The bottle had magically vanished from our bathroom, and the hospital couldn't determine which chemical had caused the miscarriage. My spouse has finally stopped defending his sister. He sat on our bed, holding the empty vitamin bottle we discovered buried in our garbage can outside. His hands shook as he repeatedly flipped it over. Vanessa had just been in our house 2 days before the incident, claiming she wanted to assist organize the nursery. I began capturing everything, every text, social media post, each harsh comment Vanessa had made throughout the years. My laptop became my constant companion as I pieced together a pattern that had before been too painful to see. 3 weeks after we lost our baby, I learned something that made my blood run cold. Vanessa's best friend Diana worked at the pharmacy where I filled all of my prescriptions. I remember them giggling together at family events. Diana is often asking probing questions regarding my fertility procedures. I drove to the pharmacy while Diana was on duty. She saw me approaching and attempted to flee into the back room, but I caught her near the vitamin aisle. Her face became white when I mentioned the prenatal vitamins. "I don't know what you're talking about," she muttered, her hands trembling as she straightened the bottles on the shelves. That evening, Vanessa wrote on her mother blog about toxic family members who make false charges. Within hours, her supporters had flooded my social media with angry remarks. My phone buzzed non-stop with notifications calling me envious, deluded, and attention-seeking. My spouse erased his social media accounts after his own sister's followers began to harass him too. We sat in our living room, curtains drawn, feeling as if we were under attack. He repeatedly apologized for not believing me sooner. He had tolerated Vanessa's antics for many years. The next family supper was held at Vanessa's residence. We almost didn't go, but my mother-in-law contacted my husband in tears, pleading with us not to let this ridiculous mistake break the family apart. Despite my better judgment, we went. Vanessa had intentionally put baby Serafina's bassinet in the center of the dining room. Every time I looked up from my plate, I noticed the name embroidered on the blanket. Vanessa continued saying that some individuals couldn't tolerate other people's happiness. During supper, Vanessa excused herself to nurse the baby. Her laptop was open on the kitchen counter, the screen still shining. I'm not sure what possessed me, but I found myself approaching it, pretending to collect more water. The browser was open to her email. My heart hammered as I noticed subject lines regarding fertility herbs and natural miscarriage cures. I instantly got out my phone, my hands shaking as I shot photo after photo of the screen. "What are you doing?" Vanessa's words pierced the air like a knife. I spun around with the phone still in my hand. She lunged for it, but I pulled back. We wrestled in the kitchen, her nails cutting into my wrist as she attempted to take my phone. "Give it to me," she growled, but I held on. My husband heard the commotion and raced in. For the first time in his life, he saw his sister's mask fully off. Her face was twisted with wrath, unlike the lovely character she usually presented. "She's trying to steal my phone," Vanessa said hastily, tears welling up in her eyes. "She's gone crazy, just like I told you all." But my husband had already noticed the scratches on my wrist and the crazy expression in his sister's eyes. He stood between us, and for once, he did not side with her. "We're leaving," he whispered calmly, holding my hand. Vanessa's tears dried instantaneously. "Fine. Run away like always, but everyone's going to know the truth about her." We drove home in quiet, my wrist hurting from where she had scratched me. I showed my spouse the photographs I had taken. His face became paler with each image. The next morning, Vanessa's mommy blog had a lengthy essay about dealing with mentally ill family members. She said I attacked her in her own home and had been faking my pregnancies for attention all along. She even shared a photo of herself with a minor bruise on her arm, despite the fact that I had never touched her. Her followers ate it up. Comments poured in saying how strong she was and how difficult it must be to have such a nasty sister-in-law. Some even launched a hashtag called Justice for Vanessa. My mother-in-law called within hours. "You need to apologize," she began, without even asking for my side of the tale. "This has gone too far. Vanessa's considering filing a restraining order." "She poisoned my baby," I couldn't help but exclaim. "Don't be ridiculous," my mother-in-law exclaimed. "Vanessa would never do something like that. You're clearly having some kind of breakdown. Maybe you should get help." My husband seized the phone from me. "Mom, you didn't see what happened. Vanessa attacked Clara, not the other way around." "Oh please," his mom scoffed. "You always take her side now." Vanessa showed me security footage from her kitchen. It definitely shows Clara poking around her own computer. My heart fell. Of course, Vanessa had manipulated the tape to exclude our conflict, making me appear to be the aggressor. My husband argued with his mother for a few more minutes before hanging up, frustrated. Over the next few days, the situation became far worse than I could have imagined. Vanessa filed a report with Child Protective Services, stating that I was mentally unstable and should not be able to adopt children. She had found that we had begun the adoption procedure months earlier, before our final pregnancy. The social worker that came to our house was competent, but clearly influenced by the issues raised. Apparently, Vanessa's mommy blog followers had been calling the adoption agency, sending emails about my dangerous behavior. "We've received over 50 complaints," the social worker explained, scanning through her folder. "While we have to investigate all claims, I want you to know that organized campaigns like this usually indicate someone has an agenda." We offered character references, medical records indicating that my mental health was great, and whatever else we could think of, but the damage had already occurred. Our adoption application was put on hold while the agency conducted an investigation. I cried in my husband's arms that night. Vanessa had not simply stolen my baby's names, she was attempting to take any opportunity I had at parenthood. The next morning brought more agony. Vanessa had shared images of my snooping on her laptop, conveniently editing out anything related to her research on herbs that cause miscarriage. Her fans called me a criminal and demanded that I be prosecuted for invasion of privacy. My husband and I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by printed correspondence from the adoption agency. Each one described another worried citizen who had contacted them over my alleged mental illness. The phrasing was eerily similar throughout dozens of messages, indicating evident coordination. Diana called me in the afternoon. Her voice shook as she whispered into her phone. "Meet me at the park on Elm Street. Come alone. I need to tell you something." My husband wanted to join me, but I knew Diana would run if she saw him. I discovered her sitting on a seat near the playground, nervously watching mothers push their children on swings. "I can't do this anymore," she announced as soon as I sat down. "Vanessa's gone too far. The vitamins. She made me switch them. Said it was just harmless herbs to help with your anxiety." My hands curled into fists. "You knew what they were." Diana's eyes streamed with tears. She had dirt on me. I've been skimming pills from the pharmacy. Just anxiety meds for myself. Nothing serious. But she found out somehow and threatened to report me unless I helped her. I took out my phone to record, but Diana grabbed my wrist. No recordings. I'll deny everything if you try to use this against me. I wanted you to know I'm sorry, and to warn you. She's not done. What do you mean she's not done? Diana looked around uneasily. She's been stealing your mail. Has copies of all your adoption paperwork. She knows which agency you're using, who your caseworker is. Everything. My blood became chilly. We'd been wondering why some of our mail seemed to disappear. Diana moved to go, but I caught her arm. You have to tell someone. The police, the adoption agency, anyone. She pulled away from me. I can't lose my job. I have kids too. She raced away, leaving me alone on the bench. That evening, my husband placed security cameras throughout our home. We replaced all of our locks and forwarded our mail to a post office box. It felt like we were ready for battle. Vanessa's next move occurred during Thanksgiving dinner. The whole family gathered at my mother-in-law's house, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Vanessa arrived late but made a great entry with her 4 children dressed in identical costumes. Throughout dinner, she made critical remarks about those who can't let go of the past and the value of mental health therapy. My husband's jaw tightened with each jab, but he remained silent. As we were clearing dessert plates, Vanessa stood up and clinked her wine glass. I have an announcement. The room went silent. Vanessa's hand moved to her tummy in the familiar gesture I'd used so many times before. We're expecting again, and I've already chosen the perfect name. My mother-in-law gasped in delight. Oh, Vanessa, how wonderful. Yes, Vanessa said, her gaze fixed on mine. If it's a girl, we're naming her Margaret after Clara's dear departed mother. The room swirled. My mother died only 6 months ago. Her name was the last holy thing I had left. I stood so rapidly that my chair toppled backward. You wouldn't dare, I whispered. Vanessa's smile was pure hatred. Why not? It's such a beautiful name, and someone should use it since you clearly can't. My hubby was also on his feet now. That's enough, Vanessa. You've crossed every line. Have I? Vanessa screamed. She's the one who broke into my computer. She's the one spreading lies about me. I'm just trying to honor family traditions by stealing the names of dead babies. My husband's voice was really quiet. The room erupted. My father-in-law began ranting about keeping the peace. Vanessa's husband looked perplexed, questioning what was going on. The youngsters began crying. During the chaos, Vanessa grabbed her phone and began live broadcasting to her parenting blog readers. You can see how I'm being attacked in my own family, she told the camera. All because I want to honor my sister-in-law's mother. My spouse took my hand. We're leaving. As we approached the door, Vanessa cried out. Oh, Clara, you might want to check with the adoption agency. I heard they received some very interesting information about your mental health history. We drove home silently, both too outraged to speak. When we came home, our adoption caseworker had left a message on our answering machine, requesting us to call right away. My hands shook while I dialed the number. The caseworker's tone was intentionally neutral as she explained that they had received documents indicating that I had been hospitalized for psychiatric disorders several times. That's not true, I responded, my voice breaking. I've never been hospitalized for anything except my miscarriages. I understand, she replied. But we need to investigate these claims. Can you provide your complete medical history? After I hung up, my husband discovered me sobbing on our bedroom floor. He held me while I cried, murmuring vows that we'd battle it, and Vanessa wouldn't win. The next day, we visited the hospital to obtain my medical records. The administrator looked up my file and grimaced. This is strange, there are entries here I don't recognize. My heart fell as she showed us the screen. Someone had entered phony psychiatric admissions into my electronic records, complete with diagnoses of delusional disorder and pathological lying. This is fraud, the administrator stated. We'll need to investigate how someone accessed our system. It took 2 weeks to have the false entries removed and identified as fraudulent. Vanessa increased the intensity of her campaign throughout this period. She made bogus social media accounts in my name and posted insane rants about wanting to kidnap other people's babies. She sent anonymous information to my employer regarding my mental instability. My spouse began taping everything. He bought a little camera to wear on his shirt and record every encounter with his family. His mother labeled him paranoid, but he didn't care. The breakthrough occurred from an unexpected source. Vanessa's eldest daughter Lila, now 8 years old, called our house one evening when her parents were out. "Aunt Clara," she began quietly, "I need to tell you something. Mommy makes us lie about you." My husband promptly began recording as Lila described how her mother forced her and her brothers to tell people I was nasty to them, scared them, and spoke negative things about their family. "She practices with us," Lila added. "Makes us repeat the lies until we say them right. I don't want to anymore. You've never been mean to us." We kept the recording and added it to our expanding collection of evidence. However, Vanessa must have learned about Lila's call because the next day she posted about how I was manipulating innocent children and turning them against their mother. Her supporters were outraged, issuing death threats to my social media profiles. Someone released my work address online, and demonstrators came up at my office with posters accusing me of killing babies and preying on children. My supervisor called me into his office. "I know this is personal," said the man, "but it's affecting the company. Maybe you should take some time off until this blows over." I was effectively suspended from my job. Vanessa had destroyed my reputation, my work prospects, and my chances of adoption. But she was not yet satisfied. 2 weeks later, my husband's grandma turned 90. We discussed not going, but his grandma had always been good to me, and I didn't want to let her down. The gathering was held at a restaurant. We assumed neutral ground was safe. Vanessa came late as usual, ensuring that all eyes were on her. She air-kissed family and enthused over her pregnancy, which was now clearly visible. During the cake cutting, I excused myself to visit the bathroom. Vanessa followed me inside, scanning the stalls to ensure we were alone before turning to face me. "You should just give up," she added casually, applying lipstick in the mirror. "You're never going to be a mother. The adoption agency has already rejected your application." "Oh, didn't you know? I have a friend who works there." I remained silent, remembering that my husband's camera was filming everything. Vanessa continued, misinterpreting my silence as defeat. "It was so easy, really. Diana at the pharmacy, my friend at the hospital who helped with your medical records, the social worker who owed me a favor. You never stood a chance." "Why?" I eventually inquired. "What did I ever do to you?" Vanessa's reflection smiled at me. "You married him. You took my brother away from me. He was supposed to always put me first. And then you came along with your fertility story, and suddenly he cared more about you than me. So you unalived my babies?" Vanessa laughed. "I didn't unalive anything. You did that all on your own. I just helped nature along with the last one. Consider it a favor. You're clearly not meant to be a mother." I walked out of the bathroom without saying anything, my heart hammering. We eventually got her confession on camera. However, when my husband checked the camera that night, the battery had inexplicably died just as Vanessa followed me into the toilet. We had nothing. Vanessa's husband then called my husband and requested a private meeting. We anticipated he would threaten us, but instead he appeared drained and beaten. "I found her journal," he explained, sliding a leather notebook across the table. "I wasn't snooping. It fell out of her purse. I think you need to see this." Vanessa's journal contained devastating information. Page after page described her plots to destroy me, her delight in each miscarriage, and her collaboration with Diana and others to sabotage my life. The entries about other family members she had targeted over the years, however, were particularly troubling. She poisoned her mother-in-law's cat when the woman advised her to postpone having children. She had disrupted her cousin's wedding by sleeping with the groom. She had gotten her college roommate expelled by putting drugs in her dorm room. "I don't know who I married," Vanessa's husband remarked, his voice breaking. "The kids. I'm filing for divorce. I'll testify about what I found if you need me to." We photocopied each page of the journal before returning it. We finally had real evidence. But Vanessa struck first. The next morning, police arrived at our home with a warrant. Someone reported that we were dealing drugs, therefore they needed to search our home. My husband and I stood in our living room, watching officers dismantle our carefully constructed lives. They discovered nothing, of course, but the harm had been done. Our neighbors stared from their windows as police cars lined the street. After the cops left, we discovered a message under our doormat. Vanessa's handwriting: "Stop now or next time they'll find something." That night, my spouse and I reached a conclusion. We'd take everything we had and force the family to face the truth about Vanessa once and for all. We held a family meeting at my mother-in-law's house, announcing that we had vital news to impart. Vanessa entered looking pleased, perhaps expecting us to proclaim our capitulation. Instead, my husband hooked up his laptop to the TV and started presenting our evidence. Vanessa's journal entries, computer photographs, and her husband's testimony, even Lila's taped confession to being forced to lie. The audience fell hushed as the evidence accumulated. Vanessa's expression ranged from arrogant to terrified to enraged. My mother-in-law gasped when we showed her the journal entry in which she poisoned the cat. "Mittens didn't just die," she said softly. Vanessa sprang to her feet. "This is all fake. They're trying to frame me because they're jealous of my perfect family." But her husband also stood up. "It's true. All of it. I've seen the original journal. Vanessa, you need help." The wall gave apart. Other family members began to share their own stories regarding Vanessa's harshness over time. Her pattern of behavior became clear. Vanessa's mask eventually shattered completely. She screamed at everyone, describing them as liars and traitors. She grabbed a vase and threw it against the wall, scattering shattered glass throughout the room. "You want to destroy me?" she yelled at me. "You barren witch. You'll never have what I have. Never." Her eldest kid, Ethan, began crying. "Mom, stop. You're scaring us." But Vanessa was beyond reasoning. She lunged at me, and this time, I did not back down. My husband and hers had to separate us as she clawed at my face and screamed obscenities. "I should have used something stronger in those vitamins," she said. "I should have made sure you could never even try again." The room became utterly still. Vanessa seemed to understand what she had just admitted. My father-in-law's voice was cold. "Get out of my house. Don't come back." Vanessa looked around the room at her family, including her children and husband. They all looked at her with dread and disdain. "Fine," she snarled. "But I'm taking my children." "No," her husband replied forcefully. "You're not. Kids, come here." All 4 children ran to their father, including baby Serafina in Lila's arms. Vanessa stood alone in the middle of the room. She departed without saying anything else, slamming the door behind her, having finally realized the repercussions of her conduct. The family sat in stunned quiet for a moment before my mother-in-law began to cry. "I'm so sorry," she wailed and reached for my hand. "I should have believed you. All those babies. I'm so sorry." The fallout was quick. Diana, fearful of losing her pharmacist license, spoke clean about swapping my vitamins. She produced receipts, text messages from Vanessa, and any other documentation required to substantiate what had occurred. Vanessa's husband sought emergency custody and a restraining order. The divorce proceedings referenced her journal as proof that she was an unfit mother. He also revealed that he had discovered searches on her computer for ways to cause miscarriage stretching back years. Vanessa's mother's site collapsed after someone published excerpts from her journal to her readers. The woman who had developed her reputation as the ideal mother was shown to be a calculated sociopath who poisoned family members and destroyed pregnancies. Within days, she had lost everything: her husband, children, relatives, and online followers. The adoption agency contacted to apologize and revive our application, emphasizing that the fake accusations would actually help our case by demonstrating our ability to overcome adversity. 3 months later, my husband and I were in a courthouse, finalizing the adoption of newborn twins. We christened them Amelia and Ethan, recovering the names Vanessa had taken. As we signed the documents, I reflected on the lengthy road that had gotten us here. Vanessa was facing criminal charges for vitamin tampering, but her lawyer was pressing for a plea agreement that included mental health treatment rather than jail time. Her children were prospering with their father, now free of their mother's harmful influence. Lila had resumed calling me Aunt Clara and asked if she might help babysit the twins when they were older. "I want to be a good big cousin," she'd explained, "not like my mom was a sister." As we drove home with our babies, my husband reached over and squeezed my hand. We survived Vanessa's fear campaign and emerged stronger. The twins gurgled in their car seats, and I smiled despite my tears. Vanessa had attempted to steal everything from me. However, in the end, she had simply stolen from herself. I had my family, my children, and my life back. And Vanessa had exactly what she'd always given others: the repercussions of her own brutality. The courthouse adoption ceremony concluded around midday. By 12:30, Vanessa was already causing problems. My husband saw her first, standing across the street from the courthouse steps where we were taking photos with Amelia and Ethan. She wore huge sunglasses and a baseball cap, but her tight posture revealed her identity. "Don't look," he muttered, moving to hide her view of the twins. The photographer saw our tension and suggested that we go to the courthouse garden. As we went away, I could hear quick footsteps behind us. Vanessa crossed the street. "Those should have been my names to give," she exclaimed. Security apprehended her before she could get close. We watched as they escorted her away while she yelled about her rights as an aunt. The twins slept through it all, unconcerned with the fuss surrounding their first formal day as our family. That afternoon, we realized Vanessa had been busier than we expected. Our adoption announcement on social media, which my mother-in-law had shared with our consent, had been screenshot and put on Vanessa's new site, along with commentary about baby thieves and name thieves. Diana texted me a warning. Vanessa had visited the drugstore that morning, asking weird questions regarding infant meds and allergies. Diana declined to provide any information and alerted her manager, but the event left everyone concerned. That evening, we mounted a doorbell camera. My spouse also switched our pediatrician to one across town for safety reasons. The twins required their first checkup next week, and we weren't taking any chances. Vanessa's husband called the following day with distressing news. She had broken into his home while the children were at school, stealing photo albums and baby items. She had also left a note demanding visitation with her children. The restraining order includes the children, he assured us. But she's getting desperate. She's been staying with different friends, telling them you've all turned against her for no reason. 3 days later, Vanessa arrived at my husband's workplace. She'd waited in the parking garage and approached him as he walked to his car. My husband immediately began recording on his phone. "You poisoned everyone against me," she remarked, blocking his approach. "Even my own children won't talk to me." My spouse attempted to step around her, but she moved with him. "Vanessa, you need to leave. You're violating the restraining order. That piece of paper means nothing. You're my brother. You're supposed to protect me, not destroy me." "You destroyed yourself," he stated gently. Vanessa's face distorted. She took his phone and threw it against the concrete wall. It shattered upon collision. Then she dashed to her car and drove away before security arrived. The shattered phone meant we lost the footage, but the parking garage cameras captured everything. My husband filed a police report, and a warrant was obtained to arrest Vanessa. She dodged the cops for a week. During that time, she created dozens of phony social media personas, accusing us and our employers. She accused us of stealing her children, ruining her marriage, and planting evidence against her. One profile in particular stood out. It featured photographs of Amelia and Ethan from the courthouse, modified to include Vanessa holding them. The captions stated these were her twins, who we had stolen. Several of her previous blog followers, who remained loyal despite everything, shared the posts. My supervisor called me back into his office. "I know this isn't your fault," he explained, handing a printed screenshot across his desk. "But HR is concerned. These accusations of kidnapping, even though they're false, they're affecting our workplace." I glanced at the falsified photo of Vanessa and our babies. "What are you saying?" "Take extended leave. Paid. Let this situation resolve. Then we'll reassess." I tidied up my desk that afternoon, trying not to cry. Vanessa had now cost me my active employment and everything else. That night Lila called back. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Aunt Clara. Mom's here. She's outside Dad's house. She keeps texting me to let her in." My husband quickly contacted his brother-in-law while I stayed with Lila. We could hear Vanessa hammering on the door, screaming for her children. "She says she has new vitamins for the baby," Lila murmured. "Special ones to make her smart like her." My blood became chilly. "Lila, don't open that door. Stay away from the windows." Police arrived within minutes. We listened on the phone while they detained Vanessa. She screamed throughout about her rights as a mother, how we had all colluded against her, and how she simply wanted to give her kid vitamins. They discovered a bottle of unlabeled tablets in her purse. Vanessa remained in jail for 2 nights before being released on bond. Her counsel contended that she was experiencing a mental health crisis and required therapy rather than incarceration. The judge granted bail with conditions. She had to wear an ankle monitor and avoid all family members. The pills tested positive for a moderate sedative, which is not immediately harmful but entirely improper for an infant. It was enough to charge her with attempted child endangerment. Vanessa's old acquaintances began to distance themselves as the reality became increasingly apparent. Nora, the woman who had been housing Vanessa, called me directly. "I'm sorry," Nora said. "I believed her stories about you, but then I caught her in my medicine cabinet at 3 a.m., going through my prescriptions. When I confronted her, she said she was just looking for aspirin." "But you don't believe her," I concluded. "No, and there's more. She's been using my computer to create those fake profiles. I have screenshots of everything." Nora provided us dozens of screenshots of Vanessa's activities, including creating bogus identities, manipulating images, and orchestrating harassment campaigns. It was all documented, time-stamped, and indisputable. We added it to our evidence file, which had grown large enough to fill a banker's box. My husband sorted everything chronologically in preparation for the criminal trial. Meanwhile, we centered on our new life with the twins. They were prospering, gaining weight and beginning to smile. Amelia had my husband's eyes, while Ethan had my stubborn chin. Every milestone seemed like a victory that Vanessa couldn't steal. The adoption agency called for a follow-up visit. The social worker that arrived was the same one who looked into Vanessa's fraudulent accusations. She smiled when she noticed how well the twins were doing. "I want to apologize again for the investigation," she added, watching Amelia grab my finger. "It's clear now that those complaints were malicious." "We understand you had to follow protocol," my husband replied. "Yes, but I want you to know we flagged Vanessa's name in our system. If she ever tries to adopt or interfere with another adoption, we'll know immediately." It was a minor comfort, but we welcomed whatever protection we could get. Vanessa's next action was made through her lawyer. She was suing for grandparent rights, alleging we were depriving her of her rightful bond with the twins. The lawsuit was bogus. She wasn't their biological grandma and had no standing, yet we still had to react. Our lawyer laughed as he read the filing. "She's grasping at straws. No judge will even hear this case." He was correct. The action was dismissed within a week. But Vanessa did not stop there. She began showing up at places she knew we'd be: the grocery store, the park, the pediatrician's office, always staying just far enough away to avoid violating the restraining order's distance limit while remaining close enough to make her presence known. One afternoon at the park, she sat on a bench 50 feet away and stared at us the entire time. Other parents observed and moved their kids away from her. When a worried mother asked if we knew her, I simply told her that we had a restraining order against her. Word immediately circulated around the playground. Vanessa must have realized her efforts were ineffective since she changed strategy. She began sending letters to our home through her lawyer, stating that she wanted to reconcile. Each letter featured veiled threats concealed inside rhetoric of forgiveness and family reconciliation. "I forgive you for turning my family against me," one letter stated. "I'm willing to move past the lies you've spread if you'll just let me be part of the twins' lives. They need their aunt. Don't make me prove how much." We delivered every letter to our lawyer and the police. The investigator in charge of the case informed us that they were creating a strong harassment case on top of the existing charges. Diana followed up again, this time with more details. "Vanessa's been texting me from different numbers," she complained, "offering me money to get information about your prescriptions. I've blocked every number, but they keep coming." She sent us the screenshots. Vanessa was promising progressively enormous sums, which we knew she didn't have because her husband had frozen their joint funds during the divorce. The divorce processes were moving fast. Vanessa's husband had been granted full custody, and she was only allowed supervised visits at a court-appointed institution. She had only made one visit, he said. She spent the entire time telling the kids that everyone was lying about her, and hasn't returned since. "The kids are in therapy," he explained over a coffee meeting. "Lila especially. She feels guilty for telling you about the lies. I keep explaining she did the right thing." We assured him that we would be pleased to chat to Lila whenever she needed comfort. The poor youngster had been bearing the brunt of her mother's manipulation for years. Vanessa's biggest blunder yet occurred 2 months after the adoption. She was able to be hired at a daycare center in the next town by using her maiden name and somehow passing the background check before her charges were fully processed. We only discovered out after another mother recognized her from the mommy blog drama and informed daycare administration. They fired her right away and reported the event to Child Protective Services. This infraction of working with children while being investigated for child endangerment added another offense to her long list. Her lawyer abandoned her as a client due to irreconcilable differences in legal strategy. Vanessa represented herself on the next hearing. She arrived wearing an ill-fitting suit, her hair unkempt, and black circles under her eyes. She went on for 20 minutes about conspiracy theories and family treachery before the court cut her off. "Miss Vanessa," the judge declared severely, "you need proper legal representation. I'm appointing you a public defender." "I don't need help," Vanessa insisted. "I just need people to listen to the truth." "The truth according to whom?" the judge inquired. "According to me. I'm the victim here." The judge ordered Vanessa to have another hearing and a psychiatric evaluation. She stormed out of court, ranting about unfairness. In the parking lot, she confronted us again. This time, my husband and I were prepared. We both had our phones recording as she approached. "Enjoy them while you can," she growled, pointing to the twins in their car seats. "You think you've won, but I know things. I know which formula you buy, which diapers you use, where you take them for walks. Vanessa, you're being recorded, my husband explained quietly. And you're violating the restraining order. She laughed crazily. Restraining order? You mean that joke of a paper? I've violated it a dozen times. Following you is easy when you're so predictable. Thank you for the confession, I said as the recording ended. Her face became white when she understood what she had done. She turned and dashed to her car, but court security was already approaching. They detained her until the police arrived. This time, the bail was revoked. Vanessa would be in jail awaiting her trial. The judge highlighted her confession to several restraining order violations and the developing pattern of behavior as reasons for her detention. Her husband brought the kids to see us a week following Vanessa's detention. It was their first time seeing the twins in person. Lila was nice and sweet to them, although Ethan and the other youngsters were curious but cautious. Mom's in jail? Tiny Ethan asked his father. Yes, buddy, she made some bad choices. Is it our fault? Amelia inquired, her 7-year-old face wrinkled with concern. No, sweetheart, nothing Mom did is your fault. She's sick in her mind and needs help. The children appeared to accept this explanation. They played with the twins' toys and helped give them bottles. It was a peek of what family reunions may have been like if Vanessa hadn't ruined them with her jealously. My mother-in-law arrived later that week. She had aged years in the last few months, the stress of Vanessa's deeds weighing heavily on her. I failed her somehow, she muttered as she watched the twins fall asleep. I must have. Normal people don't do what she did. Mental illness does not mean you failed as a parent, my husband reassured her softly. Vanessa made choices, bad ones, that's on her, not you. We spent the afternoon going through old photo albums for images of Vanessa as a child, smiling and appearing normal. My mother-in-law pointed out moments that she now recognizes as warning flags. Vanessa's fury after losing a game, her manipulation of younger cousins, and the inexplicable illness of a classmate who had challenged her for class president. I've always made excuses, my mother-in-law revealed. Said she was competitive, driven. I never wanted to see what was really there. The criminal trial was scheduled for 6 months out. Vanessa's public counsel attempted to create an insanity defense, but the prosecutor was confident. Diana's testimony, the journal entries, and Vanessa's own documented confessions all provided overwhelming evidence. We eased into our new routine. We went to the park without looking behind us. Doctor's appointments without worry of interference. Vanessa's name was rarely mentioned during family dinners. Every day the twins grew, and their personalities emerged. Amelia was the serious one, studying everything with earnest concentration. Ethan was all grins and chuckles, enchanting everyone he encountered. They were gorgeous and ours, and Vanessa couldn't reach them from behind bars. We received a letter from the daycare center where Vanessa had briefly worked. They were adopting new background check methods as a result of what happened. They even offered us free childcare if we ever needed it as an apology for the security mistake. We declined graciously. When necessary, the twins would seek refuge with family members or trusted friends. Trust was earned gradually these days. Diana sent one final SMS. I'm going to move. New job and new state. I need to start afresh, so no one knows what I did. I apologize again. Take care of the babies. I did not respond. Some bridges, once burned, could not be reconstructed. 5 months into Vanessa's sentence, we received surprising news. She was pregnant. She had apparently been seeing someone prior to her detention and was now in prison, facing the prospect of giving birth. Her husband was distraught. Those kids don't deserve another sibling born into this mess, he told me. And who knows what she took while pregnant. She wasn't stable. The pregnancy provided an extra element of difficulty to the trial. Her lawyer pressed harder for the insanity argument, stating that no reasonable woman would commit crimes when pregnant. The prosecutor argued that Vanessa's premeditated actions demonstrated evident premeditation, not lunacy. We went to every pre-trial hearing, sitting silently in the back and giving testimony. Vanessa became larger and more unkempt with each appearance. She'd look at us with rage, her hands shackled over her swelling tummy. She had an outburst during one hearing. They stole my life, she exclaimed, pointing at us. My babies, my family, everything, and now they sit there judging me. The judge ordered her removal from the courtroom. As soldiers led her out, she turned back once more. Amelia and Ethan were supposed to be mine. The courtroom became hushed after her outburst. Even her lawyer appeared deflated. Vanessa went into labor a month before the trial began. Despite everyone's fears, the baby girl was born healthy. Vanessa named her Clara. My hands shook as I heard. Even now, after everything, she was attempting to harm me by using my name for her child, which was conceived in chaos and born in detention. Baby Clara was promptly taken by Child Services. Vanessa had no rights to her given her current circumstances and allegations. The baby was placed in foster care while the state made a decision regarding permanent placement. Vanessa's husband considered taking her, but eventually decided against it. "My kids have been through enough," he explained. "I can't bring home their half-sister as a constant reminder of their mother's breakdown." The trial started on a frigid February morning. Amelia and Ethan were 11 months old, walking and saying their first words. We left them with my father-in-law and went to our seats in the courtroom. Vanessa arrived in chains, her postpartum body covered in an orange jumpsuit. She had lost weight since giving birth, and her face was haggard and hollow. She discovered us instantly in the museum, her gaze unflinching. Diana testified first, describing how Vanessa pressured her into replacing my vitamins. During cross-examination, she burst into tears but refused to change her story. The pharmacist had already revoked her license. This testimony was part of her plea agreement. Vanessa's husband then presented the notebook and described years of manipulative behavior that he had previously overlooked. He told anecdotes about Vanessa's rising hostility to family members, her fixation with control, and her refusal to accept any perceived slight. When it was my turn to testify, I talked plainly and calmly about the stolen names, the poisoned vitamins, and the deliberate ruin of my existence. I exhibited images of the twins, who were healthy and prospering despite Vanessa's efforts to prevent their creation. "She wanted me to suffer," I replied, following Vanessa's eyes. "Because I had something she couldn't control. Her brother's love and loyalty." Vanessa's lawyer attempted to present me as vengeful, implying that I had organized everything to take Vanessa's life. However, the evidence spoke louder than his theories. The prosecution revealed everything, including emails, false social media accounts, doctored medical records, and a harassment campaign. They aired audio recordings of Vanessa's threats and confessions. They showed the jury the unmarked medications she had brought to her children's home. Vanessa testified on her own behalf, contradicting her lawyer's advice. She rambled on about conspiracies and betrayal, alleging I had planned to destroy her since the day I met her brother. She argued that the pills were intended to benefit me, that the names were coincidental, and that everyone was lying. "I'm a good mother," she insisted, tears running down her cheeks. "They took my babies away because they're jealous of what I had." The prosecutor's cross-examination was savage. He guided her through each piece of evidence, forcing her to face her own words and deeds. Vanessa's story shifted with each question. Contradictions pile up. Eventually he asked, "Did you or did you not tamper with Clara's prenatal vitamins?" Vanessa remained silent for a long time, then quietly, "She didn't deserve to be a mother." The courtroom exploded. The judge demanded order, and Vanessa's lawyer buried his head in his hands. She had just confessed on the stand. The closing arguments were brief. The evidence was overwhelming. The confession is damning. The jury deliberated for little than 2 hours. Guilty on all charges. Vanessa expressed little emotion as the verdict was read. She stared straight ahead, her expression blank. The judge scheduled the sentence for the following month. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. We pushed past them without comment. There was nothing to say. Justice had been served, but it provided no joy. A family was shattered, leaving children motherless, and a young girl named Clara growing up in foster care. The sentencing hearing was calmer. Vanessa appeared to be sedated, her movements slow and deliberate. Character witnesses spoke on both sides. Her children did not go. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison, with a 7-year parole possibility. She would serve her sentence at a facility with a mental health program. It was more mild than the prosecutor desired, but tougher than her lawyer wished. As the guards dragged her away, Vanessa turned one last time. "Take care of my Clara," she murmured quietly. I wasn't sure if she meant me or the baby. Maybe both, or neither. We drove home, where our twins greeted us with smiles and outstretched arms. Amelia had learned to say mama while we were away. Ethan showcased his new skill to stack bricks. That night, after the twins had fallen asleep, my husband and I sat on our porch. The stars shone brightly, and the air was fresh. We did not discuss the trial, Vanessa, or the years of misery. We just sat together, breathing peacefully. 2 weeks later, we received a call from Child Services. "Vanessa's baby Clara need a permanent placement. Would you consider adopting her?" My husband and I exchanged glances before turning to our twins, who were playing on the floor. Amelia was attempting to feed Ethan a toy vehicle while he giggled. They were so cheerful and naive. "We'll think about it," I informed the social worker. That night we spoke for hours. Can we raise Vanessa's child? Could we look at her every day without seeing her mother? Could we deny an innocent baby a loving home based on who gave birth to her? In the end, love won. 3 months later, our family welcomed baby Clara. We kept her initial name, but gave her a new middle name. Hope. Vanessa's children were frequent visitors. They cherished all 3 newborns, particularly Lila, who took her job as the elder relative seriously. Their father began dating a kind woman who treated the children properly. Healing was slow but ongoing. My mother-in-law found tranquility as a grandma. She cared for all of the children equally, making up for lost time. She never addressed Vanessa unless specifically asked, and then only briefly. "She's getting help," was all she said. That's what matters now. I went back to work when the twins turned 2. My manager welcomed me back with a raise, recognizing how skillfully I handled a tough circumstance. My coworkers hosted a modest party, replete with baby images on my desk. Life has settled into a new routine. 3 youngsters under 3 created wonderful pandemonium. Clara developed a completely different appearance than her biological mother. All brilliant grins and a loving nature, the twins welcomed her as their sister without hesitation. As they developed, we taught them the truth in age-appropriate ways, about complicated families, mental illness, choosing love over hate, and how those who should love you can't always do so, but that doesn't mean you're unlovable. Diana only wrote once, and it was a lengthy apologetic letter with information on her new life. She was in therapy, working at a hospital, and attempting to make atonement for her decisions. I wrote back once and wished her well. Some forgiving requires time. Vanessa's husband remarried when his youngest turned 10. The wedding was intimate yet joyous. All 4 children were in the wedding party, beaming with joy. They had regained stability. Vanessa's lawyer provided us with infrequent updates on her case. She took her medication, went to treatment, and worked in the jail library. She had discovered religion, lost it, and then found it again. She wrote letters to her children, which her ex-husband preserved unopened, waiting for them to decide if they wanted to read them later. She never wrote to us. We were thankful for that. We celebrated the twins' 5th birthday with a spectacular party. All of the cousins arrived, as did school friends and neighbors. Lila, who is now a teenager, helped organize the games. Vanessa's other children sung happy birthday with genuine delight. Baby Clara, now 3, attempted to blow out her siblings' candles. Amelia gently stopped her, and Ethan laughed. They were extremely patient, protective and caring toward their younger sister. My husband's grandmother, now 95, sat in her wheelchair, grinning. She had survived to see her family recover from the wounds Vanessa had inflicted. She cradled tiny Clara on her lap and whispered stories about the family's past, particularly the pleasant bits. That night, after cake, presents and too much excitement, we tucked 3 tired children into bed. Amelia pushed on one more story. Ethan wanted more cuddles. Clara needs her particular blanket perfectly arranged. As I closed Clara's door, my thoughts turned to Vanessa in her cell. Did she reflect on the children she had lost as a result of her own actions? Did she regret the route she had chosen? Has she ever accepted responsibility? I would never know, and that was fine. Now she was on her own trip. My spouse spotted me in the corridor and pulled me into a hug. We had survived the impossible and created something lovely from the ashes. Our kids were happy, healthy, and loved. That's what mattered. The next morning brought the typical chaos: spilled cereal, misplaced shoes, toy-related arguments, as part of normal family life. Amelia helped Clara locate her favorite clothing while Ethan served the dog breakfast. They were wonderful, kind children, despite or perhaps because of their Genesis tale. My phone vibrated with a text from Lila. "Can I babysit this weekend? I want to practice for when I have children someday." I grinned and typed back, "Yes." The cycle of family continues. Healthier now, based on truth and choice rather than deception and suffering. Vanessa had attempted to destroy us via her jealousy and hatred. Instead, she had built a larger, stronger family bound by love and perseverance. Her biological children survived without her poison. Her baby grew up surrounded by the affection she had attempted to deny others. And we had everything she desired. Not because we had stolen it, but because we had earned it through patience, tenacity, and the willingness to love even when it hurt. The twins began kindergarten that fall. Amelia meticulously packed her equipment, but Ethan quickly charmed his teacher. Clara watched them go in tears, counting down the days until she could join them. We stood at the bus stop with 3 parents waving goodbye. My husband squeezed my hand as the bus drove away. We had made it. Despite everything, we had made it. That afternoon, while Clara napped, I finally opened the box I had stored in our closet. Inside were ultrasound photos of our missing babies, whose names Vanessa had stolen. I looked at each one, remembering the hope and heartbreak they symbolized. Then I added new photos of Amelia, Ethan and Clara playing together. Life comes from loss, joy from sorrow, and family from the ashes of another's devastation. I closed the box and stored it away. The past was honored, but not dwelled on. The present demanded far too much attention, love, and life to waste time fantasizing about what may have been. Clara was awake downstairs, screaming out for snacks. I went down to meet her, prepared for whatever happened next. We had weathered Vanessa's worst. Everything else was just life, chaotic, wonderful, and ordinary. My wife believed her best friend's lie that I cheated and left me. When the truth came out, it was too late to save the trust. I'm 35 and recently finalized my divorce from my wife Claire. We were together for 6 years and married for 2. Looking back, I think I should have seen this train crash coming. Honestly, the warning signs were there from the beginning, but I ignored them because, well, I loved her, or so I thought. Vanessa, Claire's best friend, was the label given to the flaws in our relationship. Have you ever met someone and immediately realized they had bad news? That was Vanessa. She was loud, self-centered, and constantly wanted to be the focus of attention. From the moment I met her, I felt like she was sizing me up, looking for something to use against me. But Claire couldn't see it. She saw Vanessa as her college ride or die, someone who had been there through it all. I thought, fine, I'll tolerate her because she's important to Claire. But Vanessa understood how to push buttons. During our wedding planning, things began to go wrong quickly. I proposed to Claire after 3 years of dating. We were already living together at the time, so it felt like a natural progression. She was ecstatic, as was I at first. Then Vanessa poked her nose in. It started little. She disliked our color palette, describing it as very plain. I let it go because nobody cares what colors we choose. Then she complained about the food, claiming that we needed vegan alternatives because half of the visitors would likely prefer them. There may have been 2 vegetarians in total. And then she insisted on walking down the aisle first, ahead of the bridesmaids. Yeah. You read that correctly. Vanessa wanted to do her own stroll down the aisle. Her argument was this. I've been there through every one of Claire's breakups, every hard moment in her life. This day is about celebrating the people who stood by her, not just the marriage. I assumed it was a prank at first. Who truly asks for that? But Claire merely nodded along. I could watch her cave in real time. I attempted to step in. I advised Claire. Look, this is our wedding, not a stage for Vanessa to perform on. Your sister's already your maid of honor, and that's enough. Claire became defensive, claiming I was making a huge deal out of nothing. Meanwhile, Vanessa acted as if I had insulted her entire existence. Wow, she replied. I didn't realize your fiancé was so controlling. That hurt, but instead of standing up for me, Claire folded. It's just one little thing, she explained afterward. If it makes her happy, what's the harm? So Vanessa had her grand entrance. She walked down the aisle as if it were her wedding. I could feel my parents' sideways glances from the front row, but I just gritted my teeth and smiled for the photos. I assumed that once we were married, this kind of nonsense would stop. Vanessa will have less say in our lives. A big mistake. Huge. Vanessa did not, as I had intended, fade into the background following the wedding. If anything, Mom grew more invested in our lives. Claire and I would be talking about our weekend plans, and Vanessa's name would come up like clockwork. Oh, I already told Vanessa she could join us, Claire would add. Or as another example. Vanessa thinks we should check out this restaurant instead. It was as if we couldn't make any decisions without her opinion. I attempted to bring it up gently with Claire at first. I replied, I like that you have a close friend, but I feel like Vanessa's a little too involved in our lives. Can we set some boundaries? Claire became defensive again. She's my best friend, she explained. I can't just shut her out. You don't understand how much she's done for me. Perhaps I did not understand. I wasn't present during the college years, breakups, or whatever. But I did realize that Vanessa didn't respect me or our marriage, and Claire was too preoccupied with their friendship to notice it. I hoped Vanessa wasn't trying to undercut me on purpose. Perhaps she was one of those folks who couldn't take a step back. But deep inside, I believe I knew better. Vanessa did not like me, plain and simple. And the more she injected herself into our life, the clearer it became. I'm not sure why I didn't put my foot down earlier. Maybe I thought it wasn't worth fighting. Perhaps I didn't want to risk driving Claire away. But that was my error. By remaining silent, I allowed Vanessa to believe she had the right to intervene in our marriage. It was too late for me to realize how deep her claws went. After about a year of marriage, Claire and I had finally settled into a pattern. Work, dating nights, weekend binge-watching of TV shows. Things were not perfect, but they were good. Peaceful even. That was until Vanessa walked up at our door, sobbing as if her entire world had fallen apart. It was Friday evening. Claire and I were going to make tacos and maybe watch a movie. I was about halfway through chopping onions when the doorbell rang. Claire went to retrieve it, and I could hear Vanessa screaming in the next several seconds. I looked around the corner, and there she was, clinging on Claire like a shipwreck survivor. She wore a duffel bag over her shoulder and had mascara streaming down her face. "He left me," Vanessa sobbed. "I can't do this alone." Claire brought her inside, giving me a look that said, "We'll talk later." I stood there knife in hand, feeling as if I had fallen into a nightmare. Vanessa flopped down on our couch, babbling about how her 2-year boyfriend had dumped her unexpectedly. Claire sat next to her, holding her hand and nodded sympathetically. I remained in the kitchen, trying to focus on the tacos, but when Vanessa continued her theatrical tale, I couldn't help but overhear. Apparently, her boyfriend Tyler had completely surprised her by breaking up with her via text, since he felt they were not compatible. Vanessa, of course, argued that she had been the ideal girlfriend, and Tyler was simply an emotionally unavailable jerk. "Do you have anywhere to stay tonight?" Claire inquired gently. Vanessa sniffled and looked at me in the kitchen before saying, "No. I can't go home to my parents. They'll just say, 'I told you so.' And all my other friends are busy. I didn't know where else to go." I could see where this was going, and I was not pleased with it. Sure enough, Claire turned to me. "Would it be okay if Vanessa stayed here for a few days, just until she gets back on her feet?" What was I supposed to say? "No, your best buddy cannot stay here, despite the fact that she is obviously a wreck." So I nodded and forced a smile. "Yeah, of course." At first I tried to remain patient. Vanessa felt heartbroken. I got it. Breakups are the worst. For the first few days, I stayed out of her way and let Claire handle her. However, by the end of the week, it was evident that a few days would stretch into who knows how long. Vanessa wasn't simply staying with us. She was taking over. Claire and I had carefully kept the guest room nice and organized, but it had now become a catastrophe zone. Clothes were everywhere, on the floor, on the bed, and strewn over the chair. Empty coffee mugs and takeaway cartons accumulated on the bedside. It resembled a teenager's room after a horrible breakup, only Vanessa was 34. She essentially lived in the living room, binge-watching reality shows at maximum volume and occupying the couch. I got home from work twice and found her spread out in her pajamas, eating snacks from a family-sized chip bag while watching a dating show. She didn't even look up when I went in. She just murmured, "Hey," between bites. The kitchen was not safe either. Vanessa wasn't a great cook, but that didn't stop her from using our pots and pans as if she were auditioning for a cooking show. The trouble was that she never picked up after herself. I'd wake up in the morning to find the sink full of dirty dishes and weird half-eaten dinners on the counter. I tried talking about it with Claire one night. "I know Vanessa's going through a lot," I told her, "but she's treating this place like a hotel. It's not fair to us." Claire seemed torn. "I know it's frustrating, but she doesn't have anywhere else to go. She just needs a little more time." "A little more time," I said. "It's been 2 weeks. How much longer are we supposed to put up with this?" Claire paused. "I'll talk to her." However, her actions were ineffective. Vanessa altered the script, portraying herself as the victim. "I'm sorry if my presence is such a burden," she remarked dramatically, her eyes welling up with tears. "I'll leave if that's what you want." Claire, of course, hastened to comfort her. No, it's not like that. We just want to make sure you're okay." It was infuriating. Vanessa knew how to influence Claire, and she fell for it every time. The final straw came roughly a month in. One Saturday morning, I walked into the backyard to gather some equipment for a DIY project I was working on. To my amazement, I discovered my power drill, saw, and other tools spread about the patio. Vanessa was seated on the grass painting a pile of strange wooden fragments in brilliant neon colors. "What's this?" I inquired, pointing to the mess. She looked up, unperturbed. "Oh, it's for my therapy. My counselor suggested doing something creative to process my emotions." I blinked at her. "You went through my tools without asking." She shrugged. "I didn't think you'd mind." I was done. I stepped back inside and saw Claire in the kitchen. She has to go, I stated firmly. I'm not asking anymore. Claire looked at me, astonished by my tone. What happened? She's treating this house like her personal playground. I'm done with it, Claire. I've been patient, but this isn't working. She needs to leave. Claire moaned and rubbed her temples. Okay, I'll talk to her again. This time, I did not leave it up to Claire. I sat down with each of them and lay everything out. Vanessa, we've done our best to support you through this, but it's been a month. This isn't sustainable for us. You need to start looking for another place to stay. Vanessa did not take it well. She accused me of being cruel and not knowing what she was going through. You're kicking me out when I'm at my lowest, she continued, staring at me. Wow, what a great friend you are. I didn't let her remorse get to me. I'm not kicking you out today, but you need to find somewhere else. We've given you plenty of time. Claire appeared torn, but for once, she did not agree with Vanessa. Vanessa left within a week. She stormed off in a fury, mumbling something about how I had always been domineering and Claire deserved more. As she drove away, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, our home felt like our own again. Even yet, I knew this wouldn't be the last we heard from Vanessa. The actual Vanessa damage occurred on a random Saturday afternoon. Claire had gone out for her regular brunch with Vanessa. I wasn't delighted with it, but I had ceased commenting on their gatherings months before. What was the point? Vanessa was going to be in Claire's life regardless of what I said. I stayed at home, planning to use the quiet time to run errands. Nothing exciting, just shopping, laundry, and a little yard work. By the time Claire returned, I was in the kitchen unloading groceries. I welcomed her like I normally did, but something seemed off. She barely said anything, mumbling a hey, and heading directly to the bedroom. I stood there for a second, clutching a bag of apples, trying to figure out what I'd done to irritate her. Maybe she was simply tired. I shrugged it off and returned to putting things away. Claire remained distant throughout the rest of the day. She avoided eye contact, responded to my questions with one-word answers, and spent the majority of her time glued to her phone. I asked her several times if something was wrong, but she simply said, I'm fine. Clearly, she wasn't. I assumed Vanessa had unloaded some of her typical drama, and Claire simply wanted time to process. That night, however, things became odd. After supper, she hardly touched her dish before retiring early. When I arrived later, she was curled up on the far edge of the bed, appearing to be asleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, unsure what was going on. The next morning, I resolved to pursue the matter. Claire, seriously, what's going on? You've been acting weird since you got back from brunch. She paused for a time, not looking at me before saying, I need to ask you something and you must be honest. Okay, I replied, feeling a knot form in my stomach. What is it? She eventually turned to face me, her expression a mix of rage and hurt. Were you with someone else yesterday? I blinked at her, absolutely disoriented. What? What are you talking about? Her voice became sharper. Vanessa said she saw you in a parking lot. She said you were in your car making out with some woman. For a split second, I had no idea how to respond. I almost laughed because it was so unexpected. But when I saw Claire's serious expression, my surprise turned to frustration. Claire, that's ridiculous. I wasn't with anyone, I was grocery shopping. She described your car, Claire said abruptly. She said you were wearing your brown jacket. She even knew the parking lot by that little strip mall near Main Street. I felt as if I was having a dreadful dream. Yeah, because I was at that strip mall. That's where the grocery store is. I wasn't making out with anyone. I was buying milk and bread. Claire crossed her arms and glared at me. Then why would Vanessa say she saw you? That question irritated me more than anything. Not, are you certain she's mistaken, or is there a mix-up? Nope. Just why would she lie? Vanessa's lying seemed preposterous. I don't know, Claire, I responded, my voice rising. Why don't you ask her? Because I didn't do anything wrong. But she wasn't listening. I don't know what to believe, she said quietly, shaking her head. Vanessa wouldn't lie about something like this. That hit me like a punch in the chest. She wasn't sure what to believe. After everything we'd gone through, she couldn't trust me over Vanessa. I rose up and paced the room. You've known me for 6 years. Do you really think I'd cheat on you? And in a parking lot of all places? Does that even sound like me? Claire didn't respond. She simply sat there, staring at her hands. I need time to think, she finally murmured, her voice barely audible. The following several days were horrible. Claire scarcely spoke with me. She moved into the guest room, claiming she wanted space. Every time I tried to bring up the topic, she cut me off. "I'm not ready to talk," she would reply. Or it might be, "I need more time." Meanwhile, I was roaming around in a fog of rage and disbelief. I could not quit thinking about Vanessa. This was exactly the type of turmoil she thrived in. However, I couldn't see why. Why go to such extremes? Why lie about something so important? Did she truly dislike me so much? At the same time, I couldn't overlook the larger issue: Claire's reaction. The fact that she did not even give me the benefit of the doubt revealed more about our marriage than Vanessa's falsehoods ever could. What did it imply for us if she believed Vanessa over me? Claire left a week later, having packed her stuff. She didn't even tell me where she was going. She simply stated she needed time to think things through. I didn't fight her over it. At that moment, I was too tired to fight. The following morning, I received a text from her. "I think it's best if we separate for now. I'll have my lawyer send over the paperwork." That was it. There was no discussion or attempt to resolve the situation, only a text and a lawyer. It seemed as if our entire marriage had been thrown away because of one foolish anecdote. I had no idea how to process it. One part of me wanted to fight to establish my innocence and make Claire understand. But another part of me was finished. If she was willing to throw everything away so quickly, I might not want to repair our marriage after all. Things worsened during the next few weeks. Our breakup became public, and Vanessa made certain that everyone was aware of her version of events. Mutual friends began acting strangely around me, avoiding eye contact and making cryptic remarks about working on myself. Even my own relatives began to ask unpleasant questions such, "Is there any truth to what they're saying?" It felt like I was living in a nightmare. Everywhere I turned, I was reminded of how fast people may turn against you. Claire remained silent during it all. There were no calls, texts, or attempts to reach out, only radio silence. At first I was furious, more so than I had ever been in my life. But as the days turned into weeks, the rage subsided. It was replaced with something colder and harsher. If Claire didn't trust me enough to have a talk, perhaps I didn't need her in my life. I wasn't about to ask someone who didn't believe in me. Allow her time to think. Let her remain under Vanessa's thumb. I had had enough of struggling for a marriage in which I was always second to her so-called best friend. If this is how things were going to end, so be it. 2 months after Claire left, on a Thursday evening, something unexpected occurred. I was minding my own business, scrolling through my phone while eating supper, when I received a text from an unfamiliar number. It began with, "Hi, this is Sophie. I know Vanessa lied about you. Can we talk?" I looked at the computer for a bit, trying to figure out who the hell Sophie was. The name rang a faint ring. Something about the party that Vanessa and Claire dragged me to a few years back. But why is she messaging me now? My immediate inclination was to disregard it, but something about the way she put it, "I know Vanessa lied about you," piqued my interest. I responded, "What do you mean? What lie?" Her reaction came almost immediately. "About the cheating, Vanessa admitted she made it up. I believe you should see the proof." The next day, Sophie and I met at a little coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a table near the window, fidgeting with her phone. I sat across from her, feeling a mixture of curiosity and horror. "Thanks for meeting me," she replied uncomfortably. "I wasn't sure if you'd even want to talk." "Yeah, well, here I am," I replied. "What's this about Vanessa lying?" She took out her phone and initiated a text exchange. "I've been friends with Vanessa for a long time, but after this I can't keep quiet anymore. You need to know what really happened." She handed me the phone, and I began reading. The messages between her and Vanessa were stunning. Vanessa. OMG, Claire has finally left him. She really believed me. LOL. Poor Sophie. What exactly are you talking about? Vanessa. I told her I saw him making out with a rando in his car. You should have seen her face. Priceless. Sophie. Please wait. Are you serious? Why would you do that? Vanessa. Because he's a controlling jerk and she's too stupid to realize it. I had to help her. I continued scrolling, my hands quivering with rage. Things got worse. Vanessa. It wasn't like their marriage would last anyway. Claire is so gullible that she will believe whatever I tell her. Please, Sophie. This is messed up. Vanessa. Whatever. She is better off without him. And I won't have to hear about her lovely marriage anymore. Gag. I couldn't read any farther. I returned the phone to Sophie, my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. She really said that? I inquired, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophie nodded, visibly distressed. Yeah. She bragged about it like it was some kind of accomplishment. I didn't believe it at first, but when she started mocking Claire for being too naive, I realized how twisted it was. I sat there, trying to process what I had just seen. Vanessa didn't just lie. She intentionally ruined my marriage, making fun of Claire in the process. She had twisted her best buddy out of pure entitlement and hatred. Why are you telling me this now? I inquired finally. Why not earlier? Sophie stared down at her coffee. I don't know. I guess I was scared. Vanessa can be intense, but I couldn't keep quiet anymore. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to Claire. I captured screenshots of the messages and praised Sophie for coming forward. On the journey home, I couldn't stop thinking about the talk. I wasn't simply angry. I was infuriated. I'm furious at Vanessa for being such a manipulative, entitled piece of work. Claire is furious with herself for falling for it so quickly, and I'm upset with myself for allowing Vanessa to get away with it for so long. But more than anything, I felt validated. For months I'd been walking around with a cloud over my head, wondering what I could have done better. Now I could prove that none of this was my fault. Vanessa had set me up from the beginning, and Claire had played right into her hands. By the time I came home, my rage had subsided into something colder. I was not going to strike out or accuse anyone. No. I was going to do it the right way. First, I sent the screenshots to my lawyer with a brief note. This is what really happened, let me know how we can use it. I sat down and gazed at my phone, unsure whether to text Claire. Part of me did not want to. What was the point? She had previously demonstrated where her devotion lay, but another part of me believed she deserved to know the truth, even if it didn't alter anything. After a few minutes, I typed a message. We should talk. It's important. Her response was quicker than I expected. What do you want? I kept it short. I have evidence that Vanessa lied. Can we meet? You should see this. There was a long gap before she said, fine, tomorrow afternoon. Where? I recommended a park near her new residence. She agreed, and that was all. I did not wish to win her back. I was no longer interested in that. But I needed her to know the truth. If only to cleanse my name. Part of me wanted to just toss the screenshots at Claire and let her deal with it. But I knew I needed to maintain my composure. I didn't want her to think I was overly dramatic or upset about this. When Claire finally came, she appeared reluctant and nervous. She was wearing her typical casual outfit, a hoodie and jeans, but she lacked the confidence she used to have. She saw me and gave me a tiny wave before walking over. What's this about? She said, her arms folded defensively. I did not waste any time. I got out my phone, opened the screenshots Sophie had provided me, and handed them to her. Read this, I stated plainly. Claire glanced at me, puzzled, then accepted the phone and began scrolling. Initially, her expression was neutral. But, as she read, her expression shifted. Her eyes widened, her mouth dropped open, and she was pale by the time she heard the final message. She returned the phone to me with shaky hands. She lied, she said quietly, almost to herself. Yeah, I replied, attempting to keep my voice calm. She lied about everything. She made up the story about me cheating just to break us up, and apparently she thought it was hilarious. Claire sat down on the bench next to me and stared at the ground. I didn't know, she replied gently. I didn't think she'd ever. You didn't think she'd ever lie to you? I inquired, my tone harder than I intended. That's the problem, Claire. You didn't think. You didn't even stop to question it. You just believed her, and threw me under the bus. She flinched at my remarks, but said nothing. Do you know how humiliating it's been? I asked. My friends, my family, hell, even my coworkers started looking at me like I was some kind of dirtbag. All because you couldn't take 2 seconds to ask me what really happened. Tears began to fill up in her eyes. I thought I was doing the right thing, she replied. Vanessa's been my best friend for years. I trusted her. Yeah, well, that trust just cost you your marriage, I replied honestly. Claire glanced up at me, tears running down her cheeks. I'm very sorry, she murmured, her voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. That's the problem, Claire, I explained, my tone softening but still stern. You didn't know because you didn't even give me a chance. You trusted her more than you trusted me. And that says a lot about how you saw this relationship. We sat quietly for a few minutes, the weight of everything hanging in the air. Finally, Claire spoke again. I'll cut her off, she replied gently. I'll never talk to her again. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, figure things out. I'll do whatever it takes. I groaned and ran a hand over my hair. Part of me wanted to trust her, but the reality was that the harm had already been done. She had chosen Vanessa over me without hesitation. I don't think we can fix this, I admitted ultimately. It's not just about what Vanessa did. It's about how easily you believed her. How little trust you had in me. That's not something we can just work through. Claire began to cry harder. I was stupid, she said between sobs. I should have talked to you. I should have trusted you. Please, just give me one more chance. I shake my head. I'm sorry, Claire, but I can't. This isn't just about forgiveness. It's about trust. And once that's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. She kept crying. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered all the nights I'd spent alone and wondered what I could have done better. All the pals that abandoned me because they believed Vanessa's lies. All the times I questioned my own worth since Claire discarded me so readily, and with that, my sympathies vanished. I think it's best if we both move on, I remarked, standing up. I wish things could have been different, but this is where we are now. Claire did not try to stop me, she just sat there, crying into her hands, while I walked away. I did not glance back. For the first time in months, I felt in control of my life again. Later that night, Claire texted me a long apology and begged me to reconsider. I did not respond. There was nothing more to say. Vanessa's deceit may have been the catalyst, but Claire's lack of trust was the true reason our marriage failed. And at this point, I was not interested in attempting to restore something that was already broken beyond repair. Instead, I sent the screenshots to a few mutual pals who had ghosted me. I didn't add any comments, I simply let the texts speak for themselves. Within hours, my phone were inundated with apologies and messages of support. One acquaintance wrote, "Wow, I can't believe Vanessa would do that. I'm so sorry for doubting you. You didn't deserve this." Another person added, "Let me know if there's anything I can do." It was good to feel validated, but I was not interested in rekindling those friendships. If they were so eager to believe the worst about me, they were no longer someone I wanted in my life. I didn't bother confronting Vanessa. What's the point? She'd already proved who she was, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of knowing how much harm she'd done. Even though I had cut off most of my shared friends, I began hearing stuff from them a few days later. One buddy, Hannah, called me and said, "You're not going to believe this, but Vanessa's basically been blacklisted from our group." Apparently, once word spread about what she'd done, everyone began to distance themselves from her. Sophie shared the screenshots with a few others, and the story quickly spread. Vanessa attempted to defend herself, claiming that she was only concerned about Claire and that I was controlling and toxic, but no one believed her. "She's completely spiraling," Hannah exclaimed, giggling. Curious, I looked up Vanessa's profiles myself, using an incognito account, of course. Sure enough, there were numerous entries about how her phony friends had abandoned her while she had just attempted to help. A single comment read, "So, I guess people can't handle the truth. I stood up for Claire when no one else would, and now I'm the bad guy." Pathetic. The comments were not particularly sympathetic. Most individuals called her out, stating things like, "You didn't help anyone, you ruined a marriage. This is what happens when you manipulate people. Maybe take a good hard look at yourself before blaming everyone else." It was satisfying to watch her finally receive what she deserved. Meanwhile, Claire's life wasn't looking good. She moved back in with her parents after everything went down, and from what I understood, things were tight. Her mother, who had always been skeptical of Vanessa, was outraged when she learned the truth. A common friend told me about Claire's particularly heated dispute with her mother. Apparently her mother said, "You threw away a good man for a liar. How could you be so stupid?" She was harsh, but she wasn't completely wrong. Claire was trying to rebuild her life, but things weren't going well. Her attempts to reconnect with some of our former pals elicited mixed responses. While some people were willing to forgive her, the majority were not. They'd seen how easily she turned on me and didn't want to be in the same situation again. "She looks miserable," Hannah informed me during one of our few discussions. "Like she's trying to put on a brave face, but it's obvious she regrets everything." Several weeks later, Vanessa lost her job. Sophie, who still worked with her, texted me quickly, "Just thought you'd want to know. Vanessa got fired today." It turned out that Vanessa's reputation was catching up with her at work. People found out about what she'd done, and her co-workers began to shun her. She was always the sort to cause trouble in the office, but after this, no one wanted to deal with her. Her manager eventually discovered the tension and let her go, citing interpersonal issues as the explanation. I would like to say I felt sorry for her, but I did not. She had spent years manipulating people and wreaking havoc, and now she was finally facing the repercussions. My life continued to improve. One day, months later, I ran into Sophie at a coffee shop. We ended up speaking for a while, and she updated me on the newest gossip. "Claire reached out to Vanessa a few weeks ago," she added, rolling her eyes. "Can you believe that?" "What happened?" I inquired, really curious. "Well, Claire tried to apologize, saying she wanted to move past everything," Sophie told me. "But Vanessa just laughed in her face. She told Claire she was pathetic for even trying and that she was better off without her." I shook my head in amusement and bewilderment. Figures. Vanessa does not know how to accept responsibility for anything. Sophie smirked. "Yeah, well, they're both getting what they deserve." Looking back, I can't say I'm glad things went the way they did, but I'm grateful for where I've ended up. Vanessa and Claire's toxic relationship was a ticking time bomb, and I happened to be collateral damage. However, they eventually destroyed each other, and I was able to go with a clean slate. It's amusing how life works sometimes. Karma does not always arrive immediately, but when it does, it hits hard. Claire and Vanessa learned the hard way, and I'm fine with it. They made their decisions, and now they are dealing with the consequences. I'm moving forward. I've created a life that brings me joy, surrounded by people who genuinely care about me. And that's the best retaliation I could have hoped for. My parents refused to pay for my college while funding my sister. My aunt helped me succeed. Now they want money, but I refuse. Hello Reddit. My folks were always playing favorites. So I responded, nah, screw them. I built my own life and moved on. But those folks weren't done yet. Before we get into it, let me start at the beginning. I am a 27-year-old male son with a 29-year-old sister. In our household, she was the golden child, and I was the background noise. Some individuals believe that partiality in families is just a matter of one child receiving more attention or praise. Nope. In my situation, there was obvious favoritism that everyone could see if they looked closely enough. My parents fought really hard to keep it hidden from the outer world, relatives, grandparents, and neighbors. They treated us like we were a wonderful little family. My mother was particularly adept at putting on a phony smile. When the company arrived, I suddenly appeared. She'd inquire, "How's school going?" Or, "Show grandma your drawings." But as soon as the door closed, I was back in second place. Birthdays were the most noticeable. My sister's birthdays were always a big deal. Balloons, banners, elaborate cakes, heaps of gifts, and an entire class invited. Mine? A last-minute grocery store cake, possibly a card, and a few relatives. I once asked my sister, "Why don't I get balloons and throw parties like you?" She smirked. "Because no one cares about your boring little birthday. Mine's enjoyable. Yours would be embarrassing." Competitions and schoolwork were worse. I had talent, and my teachers encouraged me to enter contests. But my parents forbid it. At 14, I was invited to regionals, and my teacher predicted I would win. My parents sat me down and said, "It wouldn't be fair to your sister if you won something she couldn't." My sister laughed, "Please, like anyone wants to see you. If you embarrass yourself, do not bring the family name down with you." Meanwhile, she seized every opportunity. Dance lessons, singing, and art seminars. When I begged to take a class I liked, my father chuckled and said, "We don't waste money on things you'll never be good at." I was 12 years old. Sometimes I believed I was overreacting. But my aunt noticed. She'd give me extra things for my birthday, ask whether I was fine, and indicate that I didn't have to remain forever. I worked hard in school. Got good marks, good teachers, and was admitted into one of the best programs in the area. For the first time in my life, I was proud. I showed my folks, expecting to receive compliments. My mother's face became flat, and my father moaned. He added, "That's nice. But we're not paying for it." I chuckled, assuming he was joking. But he replied, "We already have your sister in college. We're not pushing ourselves simply because you want to go somewhere fancier." "Fancier?" I said. "This is not fancy. It's an opportunity. It's my future." My mother interjected, "It wouldn't be fair to your sister. Imagine how she might react if you attended a higher-ranked school. We need to think about both of you." I snapped. "Every time I worked on something you shut it off. No competitions, no interests, and now this." You don't want me to overshadow her. My father snapped. That's enough. Do you think we are made of money? Do you think the world revolves around you? And for the first time, they refused to deny it. I went to my aunt and explained everything. She was stunned. Then her expression hardened. Pack your belongings. You're moving in with me. She promised to pay for everything, including tuition and housing. You deserve a future. If they don't give it to you, I will. But she did not stop there. The following day, she stormed into my parents' house. How dare you? You're jeopardizing your own child's future because of your skewed view of fairness. My mother snapped. This is none of your business. We are the parents. We decide what is fair. Fair? My aunt almost laughed, but it came out bitter and furious. You think penalizing one child for being successful is fair? What is wrong with you? My father rushed in, his voice rising. Don't you come into our home and tell us how to raise our kids? We have another daughter to think about. And she is fine. My aunt shot back. She is getting everything handed to her, and you are clipping his wings because you are afraid she will feel tiny. My mom's cheeks turned red. You don't comprehend how much strain we're under. We cannot afford to make both of them pleased. No, you mean you picked your favorite and dismissed the others. My aunt spoke as she approached. He earned it, yet you're too proud or petty to help him. Get out, my father said, his voice booming. No, she said gently but seriously. He is departing with me. And one day, when you wonder why he hasn't returned, recall this moment. Remember who walked away from him first. The room became still. My parents did not say anything else, but their silence spoke volumes. Then my mother appeared in the doorway as I was quietly packing my luggage, folding each shirt as if I wasn't shaking. You'll regret it, she added again, her tone harsh and almost gleeful. You'll crawl back when she's weary of you. My father did not even look up from his chair. I just sat there pretending I wasn't in the room, as if ignoring me would make me disappear. My sister leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a sneer on her face, as if she had already won. Then the front door opened. My aunt walked in. She didn't bother saying hi. Is he ready? She said, her tone firm. My mother spun around. You're not taking him anywhere. He's our son. No, my aunt responded, taking a step closer. He's a kid you've been holding back for years, and now you're mad because someone finally noticed. My father stood, finally breaking his silence. You do not come into my home and undermine me. We've reared our children well. Fine. My aunt's voice raised. Fine if you truly support them. Fine is when you do not reprimand one child because the other is unable to keep up. You're more concerned about your reputation than his future. My mother's face went red. You don't comprehend how much strain we're under. Stop, my aunt snapped. You've had years to correct it. Instead, you doubled down on favoritism while calling it fair. So, guess what? He is going. And one day, when he doesn't return your calls, remember this. The meeting was tight, filled with statements that no one could take back. My parents scowled. My sister rolled her eyes, but no one tried to stop me. I did not even say goodbye. I simply picked up my luggage, went out the door, and for the first time felt liberated. My parents were outraged because it made them appear awful in front of their family. However, they never informed anyone the truth. So when I packed up and moved to my aunt's house unexpectedly, they had to explain why, which they despised. Living with my aunt was a complete 180. She didn't just pay for my tuition, she also provided me with a house where I wasn't constantly reminded that I was in second place. She supported me, praised my accomplishments, and reminded me that I was important, even on difficult days. I assured her I'd pay her back when I could, and she answered, "Don't worry about that right now, son. Just focus on your future." All I could do was grin at her. Then I worked part-time jobs to supplement my own income because I refused to rely on my aunt for everything. She never asked for reimbursement, but I wanted to show that I was serious. I shelved books in the library before class, tutored in the afternoons, and spent the whole weekend working in retail. Most nights, I arrived home weary, still facing hours of assignments. Every dollar was spent on food, books and bus tickets, with some meals skipped to stretch the budget. It wasn't easy, but I wasn't going to waste the opportunity she had given me. I also made a pledge to myself that day. If my parents ever asked me for aid again, I would remember this moment. I'd remember how they looked me in the eyes and said, "We're not paying for your future because it wouldn't be fair to your sister." I'd never forget that. Moving in with my aunt seemed like entering another universe. It was simply different. I was simply handled as if I were a normal person. She did not make a big issue about it. She did not baby me, but she did respect me. If I did anything well, she said, "Good job." If I made a mistake, she didn't get upset, she just helped me fix it. And mom supported my college decision from the start. She even accompanied me to orientation, asking concerns about housing and ensuring I had all I needed. In the meantime, my actual parents were dealing with the aftermath. They informed my grandparents that I moved in with my aunt since it was closer to college and more convenient. They made it appear as if it was a shared decision rather than their refusal to pay for my future. But I didn't bother confronting them publicly. I basically concentrated on school. I had space to reflect on myself. I worked hard. I studied. I was actually doing fine. Every minor accomplishment felt significant to me. Not for gloating, but because it was mine. Nobody could take it away. Nobody could say, "Don't do that. It'll upset your sister." It was all mine. And speaking of my sister, she was not doing well. My grandparents would give me brief updates from time to time. She had graduated from her school, but instead of seeking work in her industry, she decided she wanted to be her own boss, which entailed creating odd enterprises with no plans. It began with a little business, then moved on to an internet venture, and then to another project. Every one of them failed. And my folks always bailed her out. Whenever anybody recommended she obtain a regular job, she'd roll her eyes and remark, "Why should I waste time making coffee for strangers when I can be an entrepreneur?" And when her businesses failed, she always had an explanation. "The market just isn't ready for my idea. If mom and dad had given me more funding, it would have worked." It was a joke. She never contemplated taking a normal job. She considered that beneath her. She aspired to achieve success without putting in the effort. My parents, as always, allowed it to happen. She'd come up with a new company plan, and instead of urging her to be realistic, they would invest more money in it. Then it would crash, and they would look astonished. Rinse, repeat. By the time I graduated, I had more employment experience on my CV than my older sister, and when I got my first real job, it seemed like I'd finally passed that invisible border. I wasn't simply surviving anymore. I stood on my own 2 feet. After a few years, I had saved enough for a down payment on a house. Nothing unusual, but it was mine. I'll never forget the day I signed the paperwork. My aunt came with me and sobbed. Not big dramatic tears, just a proud, quiet moment. She said, "You did this all by yourself." Throughout that period, my parents pretended everything was fine. At family gatherings, they'd discuss how well both of their children were doing. They'd brag about my sister's business activities as if she were a mogul. They rarely mentioned me, except in vague terms like, "Oh yes, he's working now, he's fine." They never revealed I had lived with my aunt for years. They never admitted that they didn't support me through college. But here's the thing, I didn't care anymore. I had an aunt, I had grandparents, and it was enough. They showed up for me, the rest was only noise. I also reimbursed my aunt for every penny she spent on my education expenses. It took some time, but I made sure to complete it. She attempted to refuse at first, but I insisted. I told her it was vital to me not only financially, but also to prove to myself that I could stand on my own 2 feet. And as I was establishing my life, my parents were getting deeper into debt. My sister's failures piled up, and instead of facing reality, they took out a loan to keep throwing money at her. According to what I learned later, they even began borrowing from other relatives. They were so determined to keep the golden child dream alive that they had no idea they were sinking themselves. Moving home with my aunt marked a watershed moment in my life. It wasn't simple, but it was free. It was the first time I had the opportunity to craft my own story rather than being cast as the shadow. I'd been in my position for a few years when this happened. Things remained stable, I was paying my bills, I owned my home, and life seemed terrific. For once in my life, I wasn't concerned with what my parents thought. I was not second-guessing every decision I made. I was just living. And then, 2 months ago, I received a promotion that altered everything. This wasn't a small, "we'll give you an extra $1 an hour" deal. It was a proper promotion with a large raise. The kind of raise that makes you sit there staring at the HR email, thinking, "Wait, is this real? Did they actually mean to send this to me?" I'd also worked my ass hard for it. Late nights, extra tasks, going above and above when nobody asked, and it all paid off. The first people I wanted to inform were my aunt and grandparents. They had been my biggest supporters since the beginning, people who believed in me even while my own parents did not. So I called them up and shared the good news. My aunt cried on the phone, my grandmother said she always knew I'd do well, my grandfather said I deserved it and he was proud of me. That call meant more than just the promotion itself. To celebrate, I decided to treat them to supper. Not just any meal, but somewhere posh. The dinner itself was incredible. We laughed, ate, and discussed all of our struggles to get there. My aunt continued telling me, "See, I told you it would all work out." She was the type of person who always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. My grandparents were shining. They told me stories of when I was a kid, and how they always regarded me as the silent achiever, even though my parents never recognized it. I felt as if my efforts had come full circle, and that I was no longer just surviving, but thriving. At the end of the night, my aunt took some photos of us at the table. Nothing extravagant, just a few joyful photos. Later she shared them on Instagram. She wrote a lengthy caption about how proud she was, how she'd seen me fight and improve, and how now I could enjoy the benefits of my labor. I didn't think much of it at first. To me, it was simply a beautiful post from my aunt. But of course my sister follows her, which is how the whole problem began. She apparently freaked out when she saw images of us at the upscale restaurant. She sent me a message on Instagram. "Wow, must be nice flaunting money while your real family can't even keep the lights on." I stared at the message for a moment, attempting to comprehend its chutzpah. This was the first time she had communicated with me in years. Years. Not a, "Hey, congrats on the promotion." Not a, "How are you doing?" Not even a simple, "Hello." Just plain entitlement. She saw me doing well, yet her first thought was not to be happy for me. They demanded that I share it with them. I told the woman, "I worked for this. Nobody handed it to me." Her response was, "Spare me. You wouldn't even have a degree if Auntie hadn't rescued you. You think you're so special because you got lucky with a job." Then my parents joined in. They sent me a lengthy note about how they had made several sacrifices for me as I grew up, and how it was now my responsibility to support them as a son. They replied, "We took care of you. Now it's your turn to take care of us." I laughed. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not because they asked, but because they had the audacity to demand it like I owed them. My sister doubled down. She sent me another message, accusing me of being selfish and forsaking my family. She said I owed her because all of her failed businesses were for the family, and I should be supporting her ambitions now that I had a consistent paycheck. She also stated, "If you really cared about family, you'd invest in me. We'd all gain if I blew up." I believed that was the end of it, but I subsequently saw her on the street. Of course, she couldn't simply stroll past. She needed to start something. She crossed her arms and sneered. "Okay, Mr. Big Promotion, it must feel fantastic to think you're superior than the rest of us." I held my voice steady. "I don't think I've improved. I just worked harder. There is a distinction. Please. If I had half of your chances, I'd already be running my own kingdom," she shot back. "Chances?" I raised an eyebrow. "You took advantage of every opportunity that presented itself. Do not blame me for your sloth. Laziness." She scoffed, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I am an entrepreneur. I don't squander my life working at a desk." I smirked. "Entrepreneurs actually create something. You simply deplete wallets and call it vision. There is a distinction." She lifted her chin, attempting to project confidence. "You will regret shutting us off. When my next concept takes off, you'll be the one wishing to be in my shadow." I moved closer. "Number. The only thing I regret is giving you so much of my time. Enjoy your fantasy, but don't expect me to fund it ever." I turned and began walking away. "Behind me," she snapped, her voice rising. She yelled, "You'll regret this. You think you're better than me now, but you're nothing without us." "Nothing?" I didn't look back and continued going, leaving her shrieking at nothing. The arrogance made me stunned. This was the same sister who received everything on a silver platter while I was told to settle for scraps. And now she wanted me to fund her lifestyle as well. I later screenshotted everything and sent it to my aunt and grandparents. My aunt called me within minutes. Absolutely furious. I've never heard her this angry. She told me that while I knew they were selfish, this was a whole other level. She then called my parents personally. I'm not sure what she said because I wasn't on the line, but based on what I heard afterward, she ripped into them like never before. She lay out everything. How they refused to pay for my tuition. They constantly favored my sister. How they let me leave at 18 instead of helping me. She stated that they had no right to ask me for anything and should be humiliated for even attempting. Then came a bigger wave. The remainder of the family found out. When my aunt began talking, the story spread. My grandparents on my father's side called to ask what had happened. So I told them the whole truth. They were stunned. Apparently, my parents had been asking them for money for years under the guise of aiding the children. My grandparents felt they were distributing the assistance between me and my sister. They were enraged when they discovered that all of money had gone to subsidize my sister's countless unsuccessful companies while I received nothing. They called my parents and abruptly cut off their financial support. They explained that if my sister wanted to be an adult, she needed to obtain a job and pay off her obligations like everyone else. No more handouts. I had no idea my grandparents had been giving them money before this. It blew my mind how much my parents had lied to maintain the golden child image. They pretended to everyone that they were equally supportive of both children, when in fact they were funneling everything into one while destroying the other. So here's the thing. The moment their tiny secret was revealed, their immaculate family image disintegrated. Relatives who used to adore my sister began to have second thoughts about my parents. People who believed my mother was a fantastic, selfless mother soon understood she had been playing favorites the entire time. My sister, unsurprisingly, blamed me. She sent off another message. I was airing dirty laundry and making the family angry. I suddenly became the villain because I refused to remain silent. Then she called. No, hello. She was screaming, "You've ruined everything, you owe us." Those businesses were for the family. I let her ramble for about a minute before saying, "Done." She became louder. Click. Blocked in the middle of a yell. The best sound I had heard in years. My parents changed tactics after that, but did not apologize. My phone lighted up every day with shame and wrath. You have ruined this family. You will regret shutting us off. Do you think you are better than us? You are nothing without us. They also dragged family members into it, telling anyone who would listen that I was ungrateful and harsh. When that did not elicit a response, they intensified. Angry voicemails, late-night calls, and even unwanted visits to my aunt's house. They tried everything: begging, threatening, gaslighting. One day it was, "We're your parents. You owe us." The next, "Fine, don't come crawling back when you fail." Then I did something for myself for once. I purchased a motorcycle, something I had desired since I was a child but had always been warned was irresponsible. I rode it around, hair blowing in the wind, music blasting through my helmet, not caring about their acceptance. My sister was living rent-free at my parents' house, mooching off them while they were drowning in debt, and I was meant to be envious. It was so delusional that it nearly stopped making me angry. What irritated me was her accusation that I was responsible for destroying their reputation. She said that the rest of the family was now condemning them because I aired dirty laundry. Like, no. People judged them because they learned the truth. The years of favoritism, the college issue, the way they elevated her while tearing me down. I did not cause any of that to happen. I've just stopped keeping their secret. That's when the begging began. My mother sent another message, essentially asking, "Please don't cut us off. We know we weren't perfect, but we're still your parents." My father wrote something about how we should stick together in difficult times. And the funniest part was that they tried to guilt-trip me by saying, "Think of your sister, she needs you." As if I hadn't spent my entire childhood being sacrificed so she could feel like the center of the world. I did not respond to any of it. Not a single word. Instead, I blocked them. Phone, social media, and everything. I informed my maternal grandparents that I no longer wanted to receive updates about them. I didn't care what justification they used, what apology they made, or what sob story they told. I was finished. I can't put into words how satisfied I felt when I blocked them. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even vengeance in the dramatic sense. It was a sense of relief, as if I had finally closed a door that had been left open for far too long. In the meantime, the rest of the family had turned against them. My aunt was not giving up. Every time they tried to make a new reason, she shut them down. My father's parents refused to send them another cent. The girl who previously strolled into every family meeting like queen was now completely disregarded. Nobody inquired about her enterprises anymore. Nobody cared about her great ideas. They had learned the truth. My aunt subsequently told me that my mother wailed over the phone, unable to figure out where she had gone wrong. Perhaps that was true in her mind. Perhaps she genuinely didn't notice it. But in my opinion, she understood exactly what she was doing. Every time she said it would be unfair to your sister, she was making a decision. And their decisions had consequences. My father simply went quiet. That is what he always did. He'd let my mother and sister run the show and then pretended he had no say. But quiet is still an option. He let it happen. He never stepped in to defend me. So no. He does not receive a pass either. And witnessing the facade crumble, seeing the move from haughty demands to sad apologies, was rather satisfying in its own right. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because it confirmed what I already knew. They never cared about me. They valued control, looks, and putting my sister on a pedestal. When that crumbled, they had nothing left. That's when I realized something significant. I didn't have to scream at them. I did not need to confront them. I didn't need to exact spectacular payback. All I had to do was live my life, be successful, and refuse to help them. That was sufficient. The irony was almost humorous. They spent years holding me back so she could stay on top. And now she was unemployed, drowning in debt, and being criticized by her entire family. For once, the truth was out. Everyone knew who they truly were. They could no longer hide behind phony smiles and social media posts. And honestly, it felt better than any retaliation I could have devised. I continued hearing minor updates, not because I wanted them, but because family enjoy gossiping. Apparently my parents were rushing to figure out how to pay bills without the money they used to receive from my father's parents. Furthermore, the loans they had taken out to continually bailing out my sister were beginning to come due. Debt collectors were calling, payments were past due, and they had nothing to show for it but her history of failing businesses. My sister continued to refuse to work since she was too good to work for someone else. She had another business concept she wanted to pursue, but no one in the family was prepared to fund her anymore. Even my grandparents on my father's side advised her that if she wanted money, she had to work for it. For years, they sacrificed me on the altar of her ego. They stopped me from shining, made my birthdays smaller, prevented me from competing in events I could have won, and even refused to pay for my schooling because it may make her appear bad. They made her believe that the world revolved around her. And now she was living in the same way, hoping for someone else to cure everything. Except this time, no one was available to do it. What truly surprised me was how my aunt and grandfather reacted. They did more than just support me. They went to bat for me. My aunt tore into my parents. My father's parents cut them off financially and commended me for establishing my own life. And my mother's parents advised me to focus on my happiness. For the first time, I felt completely noticed. My aunt was a rock throughout it all. You do not owe them anything, she would remind me. And she was correct. She was the one who saved me, believed in me, and gave me hope for the future. And my sister. She kept throwing tiny digs through other people, claiming I was cold or uncaring. They took out loans and opened accounts in my sister's name. Calls were now being directed not only to them, but also to her. The self-proclaimed CEO, who believed she was too good for a real work, couldn't even get a cell phone contract approved. While I was signing mortgage documents, she slept until noon in the same bedroom she had as a teenager. No employment, no money, and no strategy. After all that happened with my parents and sister, I focused solely on myself. I did not want to bring their drama into my adult life. It was not easy at first. Cutting off your own family, even if they treated you poorly, creates this strange, empty gap. But eventually, I began to fill that place with people who genuinely cared. In the end, I didn't want vengeance. Karma handled them. I concentrated on winning at